Well, Josh, it's December, so the end of the year is already here. It's the holiday season. It means Mariah Carey's defrosted, and Michael Bublé has left his cave, and we have Christmas movies and TV shows and stuff to talk about. So today on episode 48, we will be talking about our favorite items to watch at Christmas time, whether it's a TV special or a film. We'll also be reviewing the film Moana 2, and we have a few news stories to talk about. The Animation Guild looks to have finally reached a deal to end their strike, and Wicked has become the highest grossing musical adaptation after only just 8 days. But I'm Brad, he's Josh, and this is We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Before we jump into the news this week, don't forget to give us a like and a subscription on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you're getting our episodes the second they drop. Also, don't forget to give us a 5-star review on anywhere you're listening in the audio realm. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And also stick around later because we will be giving away details for our latest giveaway. So stick around for that and find out how you can enter to win some of these prizes that you see on the table. So kicking off the news this week, we have a little bit of news coming out about Gladiator 2. So if you go back to last week's episode, we did a review on that, see our thoughts on that. But it was kind of revealed after the fact that Timothée Chalamet and Miles Teller were both considered for the role of Lucius before, Ridley Scott wound up watching Paul Mescal in Normal People and kind of was like, yeah, that's the guy I want to play, Lucius in this film. And it definitely opens up, how you would have felt about that movie had either one of those actors gotten that role instead of him.
Yeah, because Ridley Scott basically said Paul had the role before he even auditioned. Like, he saw the movie and he just, all right, that's my guy. And it would have been interesting to see if because, I think Paul did a good job. You can go back in our archive and see it. Just, I don't think the character was written the best in the end to give that emotional depth. As, I kind of talked about Gladiator had such an emotional impact when it hit you, and Gladiator 2 is more of the action spectacle than the really emotional ride that the first one was. But it would have been really interesting to see Timothée in there or Miles Teller. I think it would have been a really interesting role for Miles. Timothée, he's a fantastic actor, but I don't know if I would see him as a Gladiator because he is a smaller guy. He would have had to bulk up quite a lot to kind of be believable that he's a gladiator fighting and defeating a lot of people in an arena and stuff. But that would have been really interesting if it ended up being one of those. But I think Paul fit well. It just the character needed to be done a little bit better than it was.
Sure. I agree with that completely, that Paul did a fine job. I know Miles got in really incredible shape for Top Gun, so I think he would have been able to make that transition over for Top Gun Maverick. So I think he could have made that transition over for Gladiator. But yeah, it's always funny to see some of these news stories come out after a movie comes out of other actors that were considered for the role, because there's so many crazy cases of, this actor almost played this iconic role but didn't, and how differently, the movie would have been had this person starred in it instead of the person who wound up, being the star of the film and making it the iconic film that it was. And it's so fun to go back and look at that. I'd almost want to do an entire episode based on the what ifs, a what if episode. Like, how would this movie had changed had they originally gone with, such and such for whatever movie. I think that would be a fun case study to kind of play the what if game, as far as what if this actor got in that role instead of the one that ultimately did, and it would make for some pretty fun conversations.
We have one of those to touch on when we get to doing our Christmas favorites later in the episode here. There is one of the movies we have in there that had two big names that were originally going to be for this role, but it went to someone else that the studio was kind of iffy on. They didn't think that this was going to be a hit or do very well because they didn't have, at that time he wasn't a big name when he got this role, but it turned out to be gigantic for him and gigantic for the studio and stuff. So we'll touch on that and come back to that when we hit the Christmas favorites. But there's even more with Gladiator 2 that they talked about. So in the movie, they do feature some more animals, while some of them did look a little rough, like the baboons to me looked a little rough.
Sure, a little bit, yeah.
But the rhino looked good. Well, it turns out that was in full, real animatronic rhino that could go up to 40 miles an hour.
That is terrifying to think of as well. Like some of these animals you said looked a little off, looked a little wonky, but that rhino I remember very vividly. The fact that it was a real life animatronic, that would terrify me had I had to shoot a scene with that, because it could move like that up to 40 miles an hour. Like that's the stuff of nightmares. But it's good on them for getting that, looking like it did. It looked well, and it moved really well. So good on the people that put that together. But that's insane. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy they decided to do
That was
that
actually
because they had literally someone on it writing it. It could go up to 40. It had all the movement and stuff. Like it looked pretty solid in the movie. So yeah, that was crazy. But we also got a few more details that they've been working on a sequel for Gladiator 2 since the original came out. There's been a bunch of different ideas. None of them really worked too well. Russell Crowe was involved with some of them. So like Maximus was going to become an eternal warrior. So he was going to be basically traveling through time, like basically Wolverine. He's going to be going through different time periods, ending up in like World War II. So you would have seen Maximus hitting different eras and doing this. I'm kind of glad, or I'm actually really glad they didn't go with that, because that would have really, I think, hurt the legacy of the original Gladiator, because his death and everything that happened with him in that movie had such a lasting impact. It needed to stay that way. And then if you brought him back from the dead or did it in the afterlife or something else like that in Valhalla, that it kind of sullies that legacy of what he died for and what he did in that film.
Yeah, that sounds like a terrible idea. Just Maximus going and jumping in through other time periods. It kind of that I'm glad never got greenlit, because that just sounds awful. Like, there's so many other things you could have done that could have involved Maximus, and I think they paid enough respect to him in Gladiator 2 that I think it was effective and done well to kind of honor that legacy as well. Taking that series and going forward with it. Like, I don't like the time travel aspect of it. That seems incredibly hokey. I'm sorry. That's just not something I would be super interested in seeing. So they didn't go. I'm glad they didn't go in that direction too. But there was a little bit of drama coming out of the making of this film as well. One of the main cinematographer for the movie has kind of come out and publicly bashed Ridley Scott, saying he's gotten very lazy with his filmmaking, which, we don't know the inner workings of, how these movies get put together, and you hear some, occasional Hollywood gossip as far as like people not getting along and stuff. But this is kind of a rare case of a cinematographer coming out openly bashing a director in this way, and like a producer. And it kind of creates an interesting conversation about Ridley Scott, who is, significantly older now, and who knows how many more movies Ridley Scott's going to be making. But it was definitely an interesting thing to come out of that, to see that they clashed heads as much as it did, which obviously means they're probably not going to ever work together again.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, especially with, the movie just came out. It's been out a week, so to have him already come out about that, because he mentioned he's lazy, that he would just hurry up and shoot things. They wouldn't move things out of the way, so there may be other, setups or cameramen or something else in the shot in the way, and he's like, I will remove that in post-production. So instead of just clearing set, moving things around, waiting, appropriate amount of time to get stuff set, he just kind of rushed through filming it, and like, if there's any mistakes, we'll fix it in post-editing, which, of course, Gladiator 1 is infamous that there was something that was missed in post-editing, because you had the canister that helped flip the chariot was very visible in the back of the chariot, so that was something that they highly missed. So I'm now curious to go back into Gladiator 2 when we get the home release and stuff, to look through and see if there's anything. Are we going to see a gaffer, someone just standing in the background eating a donut, or kind of as we had with the Mandalorian as well, that you had half of a guy like being seen standing in the background who was just someone working on set there that was accidentally included in there, which of course they went back and edited them out, but it's well known now that was in there. So it's going to be curious to see. But yeah, just to see that bashing come out right after the movie came in. Yeah, Ridley is getting older and is probably trying to make sure he gets through this filming as quickly as he can, because he is older and needs his rest and everything else. But yeah, that was kind of odd to see him just kind of come out and attack him in that way, or just discuss just how kind of rough he's gotten with his filming. Like, I was a fan of Gladiator 2. It had a lot of problems, but I wonder if a lot of those problems was because he kind of rushed through it.
Sure, and it could have been, but I think in the end, like as you said, you go back and see how we felt about the film. I thought it did a fine job. We gave it a pretty favorable review and a favorable score, and for good reason. It is a good movie, but I would like to go back and kind of see what we get in the home release of that, if they don't catch it again, if we find some of these things that could have been left in there potentially. But it just goes to show, man, the magic of editing, and how things can get covered up through that process, and just how talented these people are to take something that if you go and actually see how it's made versus how it looks in the end, like it's wild, the Hollywood magic that they call it, that they put together to kind of make these things look as incredible as they do when you view them in practicality in a real world setting, that they look significantly different a lot of times than they do as they're actually filming, which is kind of the neat and wonderful part of filmmaking. I think that, is definitely something that, I like watching and observing and studying for sure.
It'll be interesting to see what Ridley Scott has to say back on it, because he hasn't really shied away from responding to controversy or other comments. So it's going to be interesting to see what he has to say on this, if he does end up talking about it.
Absolutely.
So moving on, our next two stories do kind of have a lot to do with each other. So the Animation Guild has been on strike, kind of as we had the actors' strike and the writers' strike going on. They've been on strike for a new deal, especially dealing with AI, but it looks like they've reached a tentative deal for a 3-year contract that does have some provisions on AI that includes, notification and consultation, so they have to let them know if they're being used. But it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to have to be signed off on, because, we're going to be talking about how AI has been showing up more, that we kind of think it wasn't going to be this way with the TV and writing side, that their studios are still going kind of full in. So I'm really curious to see what the details of this contract is for the Animation Guild, because that is one area that can be very scary with AI, because that's one area where you could see that, are they going to start trying to animate games or movies or TV shows using AI and not even having the animators anymore?
Yeah, I hope at the end that this agreement that they come to is acceptable for everybody, and it's agreed upon, and people can get back to work and back to doing, what they love to do. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing for me and for everybody involved in, animation and, production in that field, and everything that are really struggling right now. I see like all the time, people trying to find work, people trying to, chomping at the bit to kind of get back to what they love doing, and hopefully that this agreement kind of gets people back on track with that. And we know AI is not going away, unfortunately, like it's going to be a thing, but finding a way to make it work with real human input and real human involvement, I think is super important to kind of strike that balance if they're going to use it. Like, you need people still. Like, AI is not going to completely do away with the need for everything, but feels like it's still going to be limiting opportunities for people, which is unfortunate. But hopefully this agreement that they reach is, beneficial for everybody, and people can get back to doing what they love.
Yes, we already have a huge example here in that Coca-Cola has their infamous Christmas commercials with the polar bears, with Santa and the semis and stuff. It's been beloved commercials that you see every year. And this year they decided to go with AI, and it's received a ton of backlash. So there's been a lot of people, along with myself, that have looked through it. You can see, it looks unnatural still. You can tell the movement of the trucks don't feel natural. The people don't feel natural. There's artifacts and different issues of things just aren't looking right. Even the Coca-Cola logos on some of the bottles do not have the correct loops and other stuff like that. So they're showing that that commercial that they decided to move forward with has a ton of imperfections, and how many animators and other people lost their jobs or didn't have the opportunity to create that because they went with an AI prompt to do that commercial.
Good, and I hope that people see that and people voice their frustrations with it to it. Hopefully that kind of helps, get people on the side of the people doing the actual work there. And like, I've seen some really, really bad AI generated stuff, some really awful stuff with some very basic prompts being put in for it. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all works moving forward. Like, companies like Coke getting backlash for using it in their commercials when it doesn't look right, doesn't look natural. Like, that's the kind of pushback that I think people need to give to, just have people's backs, in that case. Like, it's there's a lot of things that can be used for well, and I don't think that they're finding, the right notes to hit to make this successful so far. But just the sheer fact that they put something like that out there, and who knows how heavily it was vetted before it was put out there, who was approving these, who looked them over, who, sent them out. Because I saw that ad as well, and it was messy, and it very obviously messy. And, I think giving that pushback and that feedback to these companies is the first step. Hopefully it doesn't lead to like boycotting products and getting that that extreme with it, but it could. Like, I could very easily see people like, okay, well, if you're going to do that, I'm not going to drink Coca-Cola anymore or something, and, we'll see what the, pushback from people and the consumers in the market for those products are. Like, hey, we don't want your AI commercials. Like, hey, we don't want this. I'm not going to give you my money and my support if you continue to do this kind of thing. And maybe that's the next step. And it's kind of an extreme step to take, but I think it could be one that could be necessary and one that people start doing to kind of send that message back. Like, hey, we don't like any of this. We don't support any of it.
You can't lose the human element. Like, AI doesn't have the emotion. It doesn't have, and if it does get the emotion, then we're kind of all screwed when it gets to that point, because that's Skynet.
Yeah, more or less.
And especially if you watch Terminator Zero, you can see what we thought about it when AI starts thinking emotionally and mixed with rationally and going off of everything. It's a mess, and that's kind of what you see here with the Coke commercial. Like, it lost that emotional feeling because everything kind of looks just weird, and as you got that, just the movements are like really like, it's almost, you can see that it's on a loop when the movements and stuff happen, and it just looked bad. But yeah, that's what we hope for the Animation Guild and everybody else who might be affected by AI here, is that it should be a tool for people to be able to use, but not something that takes over. So if you have someone who has maybe some animation that they need some storyboards, or it's not trying to take over the storyboard artists or anything else, but maybe they need to flush out some ideas and they use it for the ideas, but they still have someone who takes that a little bit further and does it by hand. Or if we, start getting scripts written by AI, it's going to lose that human element. It's going to lose that emotional impact that it has. So there still has to be that human element bringing AI in there. So it's a very slippery slope on exactly of what AI should be used for and what still should be in the hands of animators, directors, writers, designers, anything like that. So like it's still such a weird time and just era for AI, because it can be useful, but it needs to have its limits.
So the other half of the story that we wanted to kind of loop into, and it's from The Atlantic, and it's that 139,000 film and TV episodes have been used to kind of help train AI. So like I said, the entertainment industry appears to be, a little bit more at the forefront in trying to make it work more for them. Like, they've pulled from some of the best, film and TV shows of all time, like Breaking Bad, The Wire, The Sopranos, at least as far as TV goes. The Simpsons have been used a ton. A bunch of Academy Award-winning films over the last 50, 60 years have been used to, like, help train AI to, I guess, utilize it how they may try to want to use it.
I'm curious to see what it's actually being used for.
Yeah, because I'd love to see what they're using that to help train it to do. So is it to help with script writing? Is it to help with, whatever it is they want it to be used for? Like, I'd be curious to see like what their hope to get out of that is.
Yeah, especially different styles, which you have animation, you have live action. So could it be with cinematography, for blocking, for dialogue and scripts? Is it for styles when it comes to just how it looks or how the animation works? But yeah, that's crazy. Just over 139,000 films and TV shows have already been used. It's almost every single episode of Simpsons for over the last 35 years and everything. So you got Seinfeld. There's a bunch of other shows and films that have been used, but it's kind of crazy. We got that Apple and Anthropic, or some of the companies have used it, but of course, if some Fox and Disney properties and other things are in there, then you got to think that they're using it too. But I really want to know what this is used for, and I'm curious if any of it was actually vetted through the Screen Actors Guild or the Writers Guild or anything like that, to know that, okay, we're using it for this purposes. Because could they say, oh, we're just using it for this, but what could AI catalog? They could catalog everything. Voices of actors, the look of the actors, like I said, the writing, the dialogue, the sets, the cinematography, how it blocks each shot and everything. Like, there's so much they could use. So how did they get all the rights and the okay to do all this? Because there's so many different layers that they probably are grabbing from. They may say, oh, we're doing A, but they're grabbing B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and all that as well to potentially use later. Like, oh, let's get into agreement here. Well, we've already got a catalog of 100,000 stuff that we can already go ahead and use.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we're going to show you the left hand, but we're not going to show you what the right hand's kind of doing, kind of thing. And I hope it's not that, but you never know with these companies. Like, they're going to look to save money wherever they can to try to maximize their profits, right? Mm-hmm. It's a business first, unfortunately. But Yeah, this whole AI thing, like we've talked about ad nauseum here, like over the next 5 years, it's going to be a real interesting case study to see how it's implemented, how it's incorporated, how it affects people that work on these projects on a daily basis. Is it going to start replacing people eventually, which is what we don't want it to do, but it could be what it ultimately winds up happening. And at that point, we kind of have to start figuring out, are we going to not support things because they use it, or like, how is that going to affect entertainment overall? Because there's a lot of ways that it could affect it positively, but I think we tend to err much more on the cynical side of things, where it's like, okay, it's going to negatively affect so many other things that it's going to make it really hard to enjoy it, and the way it all is going to shake out over the next couple years especially is going to be a real interesting thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah, because it could be like, oh, this project took 100 people, from the writers, directors, cameramen, cinematographers, editors, actors, designers, everything else. Well, now it only takes 2 people with AI to do it. And like, that's a huge shift. And it's something you don't want to see happen. Like, people are going to lose their jobs because of AI. But like I said, you're going to lose the uniqueness. You're going to lose a lot of it because AI still is sampling. It's taking from sources. It's taking from everything else it's seen. So it is not creating something original. It is sampling from what else has already been out there. And that's another slippery slope. Like, do we start seeing a lot more lawsuits when people notice, like, hey, this is using my stuff, I'm going to sue you because it's using my items. But then again, it's going to be a lot of little people going up against gigantic corporations trying to get them to change that.
Yeah, and that may be what it ultimately winds up coming down to, right? So, like I said, it's something interesting to keep an eye on. We're all on board with using it as a tool to help things. We've been very vocal about the fact that we just don't want it to replace the human element in things and cost people their jobs and their livelihood. Like I said, great tool to help, doesn't need to be a replacement. That's kind of the balance that I hope they would wind up striking, but it looks like they're continuing to push more for potential replacement than just a tool to help, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. So heading on over to our next story. So because of COVID, we've had a big shift in the entertainment industry as well, past AI and everything. So we've had a lot of films going straight to streaming, just getting streaming releases and not getting theatrical. So Wolf's on Apple TV Plus was supposed to be one that did a theatrical release, but then Apple pulled it away, only did a streaming release for it, but the creator and director Jon Watts wasn't very happy about that, to the point that he returned the money that Apple gave him to do a sequel and said no, that he's passing, he's not doing anything more because he doesn't feel that Apple is being a good partner now after doing that to him, because, he was promised or told that he was going to get a theatrical release and they decided not to do it. And we've started seeing pushback on that a lot, like Daniel Craig with the Knives Out series. We're getting another one from Rian Johnson with that new one coming out next year, I believe, that he's pushing, and I think they're all pushing for that to have a full theatrical release. But right now it's just set to have a streaming release.
Yeah, so it's been kind of it's been an interesting couple of years as far as like what's going to theater and what's going to streaming, because you've had films like Red Notice, who have very high profile actors in, like, The Rock and Ryan Reynolds, and it winds up coming out on Netflix only instead of getting a full theatrical release. So it's definitely an interesting time as far as, like, everybody has streaming services. They're very successful. A lot of people have them, and you're seeing the box office, even in a lot of cases, taking hits because films aren't doing as well as, the studios think they would in a lot of cases. Now, that's not to say that every movie that comes out does terribly, because we've seen, $1 billion movies come out this year, and, other things that we think would do really, really well just for whatever reason, for one reason or another, aren't. And there's so many things that can go into it. Like, the cost of the theater experience is still expensive, and people are being more choosy on how they spend their, spendable income at this point. Is it worth it for people to go to the theater? I mean, you and I are, outliers in that, in the sense that we love going to the theater and having that experience. But even we lately have had, not the most pleasant social experiences in theaters because of etiquette and things like that kind of do that. And then, I know that would be a deterrent for a lot of people, and people have had that, deterrent as well. Like, that's another reason why they're not going. So there's so many different factors going into it that, these studios are starting to really play it safe in a lot of cases where, like, if they don't think it's going to do extremely well in the box office, they may lean more towards putting it on streaming instead of giving it that full theatrical release that they could want, because they could wind up losing a ton of money just putting it out in the theaters and then not doing very well, because you see a lot of these films that even you and I have thought that if we're going to do really well at the box office for one reason or another, either don't make their budget back or don't do as well as everybody thought it would. And it's kind of interesting to see the shift with these studios and how they want to push that content out, because the movies are still getting made, but is it going to start affecting how much money they pour into it? Do films not look as well as they could now because they're scared to pump a bunch of money in, thinking they won't get that return on their investment?
Yeah, we've seen that movie budgets have ballooned. Like, we've got so many movies that are coming out over 125, 150, 200 million dollars, but did they really need to have that cost to them? Because, like, we look at Godzilla Minus One having under a $15 million budget, and it looked fantastic and it was an amazing film. Like, there is a look at like one that we enjoyed was If, that you can go back and look at our archives for the review of that, but that was like $150 million kids movie that I think barely made its budget back. Like, did that need to be that expensive?
Right.
And we're hitting that a lot. And yeah, back to with streaming and stuff, we even got another Dwayne Johnson movie with Red One that it was originally, I think when they announced it, going to be a streaming film, and it got a theatrical release and it's done okay. But, well, that hurt any other streaming movies from being, put out in theaters, because it's not worth the extra marketing, and, they have to do the revenue sharing with the theater chains and everything else. So they end up losing money on it because, if they just put it straight on the streaming and it does well, that's kind of based off of, if they get a bunch of subscribers, that's all of their money. That's theirs. They don't have to share it with anybody else.
Right.
But if it goes to theaters, they have to share it with, whether if they're distributing it or if they get a distribution partner, or, the cinema chains each get a cut of what the film does and stuff. So it is an interesting time for when it comes to, all right, what are we greenlighting for streaming? And all right, well, now the director wants a theatrical release. Is it worth us doing it? Because, yeah, like Fly Me to the Moon, I think that originally was going to be a streaming film, and they put it out in theaters, and it did okay as well. And then you have Wolves, where they, took away from theaters because they didn't think it was going to do too well, or they didn't want to put in. But we've also had issues with Apple and their advertising for stuff, because there's a lot of fantastic stuff on Apple TV Plus. But I don't think they do a great job of advertising. And that's Apple, who through the years have done pretty well with advertising their products. Like, some of the biggest hit commercials have been for, going back to the iPod and the iMacs and the iPhones. Like, they have been pretty popular with their ads, but for some reason, when it comes to their original content, they haven't been as good as advertising and letting those known, because there's so many good shows and movies that I don't think are being seen because people just aren't aware it's out there in Apple TV Plus.
Yeah, and that's another thing. But you have these studios that pump so much into marketing, too, that Apple, for whatever reason, just doesn't include as much in their budgeting, apparently. But it could be all part of their business strategy to, not allocate as much to that, in hopes that, word of mouth can spread and do what it needs to do for that. And you're seeing it be somewhat successful, somewhat not, right? Like, they get these critical acclaim, but do they get the overall acclaim that it needs from, the public, because it doesn't get as many eyeballs on it as it could if it went to theaters? Or, it's a weird balance that these companies are going to have to find a way to strike to, make that determination whether or not it gets greenlit for theaters. Because it seems like, the running joke is everything's getting a sequel. It's because the studios know that if, hey, I put certain things out with this label on it, it's going to do well enough that it's justifiable in investing in, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where, it's why it's so critical, really. If you're really wanting more original content, original stories, you have to find ways to support that. And it has to be a bigger level of support than just a handful of people, right? So they know these bankable things that they keep going back to are going to be what makes them money, whether it's, Shrek 97 or Toy Story 100 or whatever it winds up being. They know if they put that label on it, people are going to flock to go see it because of the name brand recognition. And that's what makes it so much harder for original content to get off the ground and become bigger hits, because, there may be fewer opportunities for that to, kind of see the light of day, or you have to find it on streaming. And then maybe if it's popular enough on streaming that the second iteration of it, the sequel, could be the one that gets the theatrical release, and then you're stuck in that constant loop of what's becoming successful and what's being put out in theaters. Like, so that's why it's so important for, you know, us to support original content, original ideas. If you want more of that, you have to show, you know, you have to show support for it to keep doing it. Otherwise, you're going to get, like we said, Shrek 97 or Toy Story 100 instead, because they know we'll go see it.
Mm-hmm. And we try to go see the smaller independent films and all that, but it's also with the cinema chains, what they had the struggle through COVID and everything and making money back, and they're still trying to get things balanced out. You know, our local chain that's closest to us, without driving 30, 40 minutes to find another theater, we're just not seeing as many of those independent films making there, because what's going to make them the money is sticking with the big chain and the big sequels and everything else. Like, you know, so like this week we ran into that problem of what we're going to review on next week's episode, that there was 3 or 4 movies coming out this week, but our theater that we see all of our movies at only had one of them. And so it made it much harder for us to, like, well, we want to show some love to these smaller films and this other stuff, but we don't have the capacity to do it because it's not showing there. So now if it was on streaming, it'd be a little easier, but then there's a balance for shows like us. It's like, well, do we do a streaming release and talk about this, or we have a gigantic movie that's coming out? Like, which one do we do as well? So it would be nice to be able to do some more support and talk. And we do want to help out the Cincinnati area with, you know, we have Film Cincinnati and a bunch of others doing a lot of great things for filming and movies being made here, that we want to shed more light on that. But it is, with the state of the entertainment industry, a little difficult to find that balance of being able to show that love and support, because we may not get access to all of it.
Yeah, and that's the reality that the entertainment industry is facing right now, especially the film industry. Like, it's a tough road to you know, get on if you're making original stuff right now, and it's unfortunate, but that just seems to be the reality that we're living in. Is, you know, if the original content doesn't get the support it needs, there's less studios willing to invest that money and give those opportunities to films. And, you know, we'll always try to highlight smaller independent films as we can and show some love to them and talk about them. I'd like to think we could probably talk about them more if we, you know, maybe dedicate some time to that. But yeah, it's so hard to get that theater experience with these independent films because less studios are investing time in it. They're putting it on streaming. They're putting it, you know, on a limited theatrical run, where if you're not in a major city, you may not have access to it, or maybe you're showing it 1 or 2 showings at a theater significantly out of your way, and you have to work harder to find it and see it, which I'm not completely opposed to, but it's still one of those things where, like, I still want it to be available in a way that's convenient, that I still want to go support my local theater chain, but at the same time, they're not willing to make that investment in those types of movies, which is unfortunate, because, you know, we want to show that love, but they make it really difficult because of all the different things at work. And that's what's so fascinating about this, like stories like this, because they're fun case studies of, you know, we see this, but we don't get so much of the info as to why. And those are fascinating studies for me.
Yeah, because you even get this time of year is pretty big for those limited releases, because they're doing it for Oscar or award season and stuff like that. And those limited, you know, we're in the Cincinnati area, which is still a big city, but it's nothing compared to LA and New York. And, you know, maybe if we do end up, and we're still pushing and hoping it comes here for the Sundance Film Festival, comes to Cincinnati, that'll give a little extra exposure to Cincinnati, that maybe we'll be included with some of those, you know, premieres or those limited releases being in the Cincinnati area, and get to see more of those. But we also got that, like, especially at the end of the year here, we've had Gladiator 2 and Wicked and Moana 2, and you've got Mufasa and so many big sequels or adaptations and stuff that are coming out. There's less room and less screens for those smaller independent films. So that's also where it comes in with Wolves and stuff. Like, was there screens available? Was it going to be able to have more than a limited release in theaters before it came out? We even have Clint Eastwood's latest, which are number 2, got a very limited release. I never saw it around here before, you know, it's kind of already disappeared from theaters. So it's like, it's a very weird time for a lot of, especially a lot of smaller films. Like, you would think a Clint Eastwood movie is going to be very big because he's put out some incredible films through his directorial career in the last 10, 15 years, but there's even stuff with him that he got a very limited release for that film.
Yeah, the opportunities are getting smaller for original content and independent films, which is unfortunate. But if you are a fan of those things, I can't encourage you enough to go support it. I know money's tight for everybody nowadays, and it's unfortunate, and people are being more choosy. I'm even more choosy with stuff outside of going and seeing movies that I'm spending my time and money on. So it's a really hard balance to strike, but it's one I hope that more people go and support these films when they're in your area. If you get a chance to go see them and support them, show them a little love, and gets more opportunities for those types of films to be made, because I do hear a lot of sequel fatigue, if you want to say that the running joke is everything gets a sequel, and I get it, but at the same time, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You have to be willing to support original ideas and original content in order for more types of those films to be made. I could go on a long tangent on that, but I think we made our point here. Like, if you want that type of content, you do have to go support it, and it doesn't seem like it's getting as much support as it needs for those studios to be more confident to take a chance on them. So hopefully, moving forward, those opportunities can present themselves and people go and support them, and we get more original content, which I think benefits everybody.
On the other hand, you have a lot of people talking about superhero fatigue and stuff like that. There's been so many superhero movies and TV shows and sequels and everything else, but it's kind of that double-edged sword, because that also helps the studios have extra cash flow to do the smaller independent films. So, like, if those big budget movies do huge, that does open up a little bit for those smaller films to get some budgets, because, well, hey, we made $2 billion off of this movie, of these couple movies. We could throw $25 million towards you to be able to do your smaller film. So it's that kind of double edge. Like, you want to go see the big blockbusters because you enjoy them and you have fun and stuff, but you want to support the independents. But the big movies are pushing the independent films out of some of the chains and the theaters that may not have that many screens. Like, we enjoy our theater that we have here locally that we go to, but it doesn't have, I think it's got like 14 screens, and most of those are taken up by the big, budget films. So we don't get as many as the smaller independent stuff. But like I said, you got to see the big blockbusters to help the studios get a little extra revenue to go do those independent, but you got to find a way to support those smaller independent films. And even if it's when it comes out on streaming or digital to buy them or rent them, or, streaming on one of the platforms, those numbers will help get it. Like, I know one that we really enjoyed in the last few years was Creator, which was an original sci-fi, smaller independent, sci-fi film, but and it did rather well, so there's hope that maybe a sequel or something like that could happen to that, because it did decent enough, but like, it wasn't a big tentpole, huge blockbuster film, but it did well, and like, we need to support those type of films so that more of them get made.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. But I want to move on to one of our last news stories of the week, and that's, coming out from Deadline, we have Austin Butler, who's going to star and executive produce in a new time travel thriller. It's going to be called The Barrier. It's going to be directed by Edward Berger, who did Conclave and All Quiet on the Western Front. So kind of an interesting pairing of those two. Austin Butler is one of the top men in Hollywood right now, getting a lot of acting roles and a lot of critical acclaim and things. And it's kind of being described as like a Top Gun meets Interstellar kind of film, which is kind of an interesting premise, I think.
Sold.
Yeah, absolutely.
That premise of Top Gun, especially like Top Gun Maverick and what it's done with how things were filmed, doing a lot of it practically, even when it mixed in CG work. You couldn't really tell when it did the CG work, and you got something like Interstellar, which is a deeper Nolan film that had so many twists and turns, was also beautifully shot and everything else. You're doing something that is a combination of those two with a director who is fantastic. He's done some incredible work, and then you have Austin Butler, who is a great actor who's been in such a variety of stuff. So that's one that's immediately piques my interest. Like, it's going to be a bigger film and stuff with it, or we'll see how big it is. We don't know what kind of budget they're going to have with it. Some of these, maybe it'll be better if it has a smaller budget and we see more practical stuff out of that, because we do see, and that's where a lot of AI stuff's coming in, that CG budgets and everything else is causing productions to really go over budget or go crazy big with their costs and everything. But I'm really looking forward to seeing this. I mean, you got a great director and a great actor to lead this up, and we'll see who else gets added to it. But yeah, Top Gun meets Interstellar, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I love both of those movies. So if you take a way to combine those two in a way that makes sense, I'm all for it. I love Austin Butler as an actor, so this is an exciting premise for me. Excited to see that when it comes out, and you know those types of films, I'm all for it. Like, give me more of that type of content. I'm here for it. It's like we said before, it's not a sequel to something. Give me something that's an original story in a way that's a style with two movies that I really like put together. It's got the potential for something really good, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, even though this could be a bigger studio film, it's something that is more original. So if we see it, everyone goes, that's what if it's a good movie, and we go out and see it and everything, that we have a chance to see more original content like that.
Yeah, we need more stuff like that, and I'm excited for that one. That sounds like a lot of fun.
And we wanted to close out the news this week talking about Wicked. So it's been doing fantastic. You can look in our last episode to see our review of it. But, we really enjoyed it. We loved it. We hope you all go out and see it. But there's been a lot of talk with it about cinema etiquette because of should you sing in the film? Should you not sing? We didn't get to mention in the last episode that in December there will be a sing-along version of Wicked coming out. So we're looking at the box office potentially being huge, even huger for it. So towards the end of the month here, getting that sing-along version. Because we've already seen in 8 days that Wicked has become the highest grossing musical adaptation in the U.S. And that's pretty big. Like, we've had some big musical adaptations and some original musicals with like The Greatest Showman. You've had Chicago. We also, nobody wants to talk about Cats, but we've had some really good musicals that have come out lately. And for 8 days for that just to kind of destroy the numbers is fantastic. I mean, it's well deserved by the movie.
It is absolutely dominating the box office right now. I'm so happy for it. I've been nothing short of, overwhelming with my praise of the film, and every single person that I know that either loves musicals or is even a musician, like has done anything musically in their life, musical theater kids, all have had overwhelmingly positive emotional responses to this movie, which is rare because it's so rare that a film like this gets made that it only appeals to a certain demographic or it only appeals to a certain type of person. But I still have yet to find somebody that has gone and seen this movie that is not giving it glowing praise. I know grown men have gone to see it and were weeping by the end of the film. Like, they were so happy with the movie, and it's so powerful, so emotionally charged, so wonderful with music that I'm so glad that it's getting the love and respect that it's getting, and couldn't be happier that it's having all the financial success that it's having. Just an absolutely incredible film, one that I know several people that don't normally go see movies in theaters more than once have gone and seen it multiple times already, and I'm so happy for that.
And it's kind of funny to see, too, that the soundtrack is doing great, but it's not going to hit number one because Kendrick Lamar's latest album came out, and it was just absolutely killing it. So, like, how did Wicked, with how good it's doing, like, well, that also shows his star power with everything too. But John M. Chu did talk that Wicked Part 2 will feature 2 new original songs. So when it came to Wicked Part 1, we did get pretty much just down the line these songs from the musical and stuff, so which also brings up debate about the Oscars and what it could be nominated for, what awards it could come out with. So it looks like at least for part 2, we are going to get some original songs, which can open it up for some more awards in the awards season and stuff. And it's going to be interesting to see exactly how they make that fit in. But it's also probably a little scary for them to do that because the music of Wicked is so highly praised and known. Like, that musical is such a gigantic hit for pretty much every single song in that. So now you're trying to mix in 2 original songs. Are they going to have the same feel? Are they going to have the same impact? Are they going to fit with the other music that you had in the film?
Yeah, and that's the gamble. They're swinging hard for the part 2. Like, I'm excited and also terrified, if that makes any sense, about the fact that they said they're adding 2 new songs that, it's got one of the most iconic soundtracks of all time as far as, like, quality of songs, the popularity of the songs. Again, pun somewhat intended for that. But they're adding 2 new ones. Are they going to be good? They better be, because they got some lofty shoes to hold up to. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see part 2 when it comes out, and those two new original songs. How good are they? Do they fit in the narrative of what they're trying to tell? Because if you've seen the musical, you know where they're going with the end of the story. And are they going to follow it as faithfully as they did with part 1? I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt because of how good of a faithful adaptation part 1 is and was. And it's going to be interesting to see part 2 and see if it, holds up to part 1, because part 1 is absolutely brilliant. I love it so much, and I'm so thankful that it's getting the love and praise that it deserves.
As you think about if they have 2 new songs that they're including within the movie itself, they're going to have a new sequence for that's not going to be in the play, or they're going to mix something up from the musical in there. So they've got to have something that happens within the movie that gives enough time and space for 2, 3, 4 minute song to happen. So yeah, we'll see how much that affects the ebb and the flow of it. We also have with some films, the original songs may play over the credits. So maybe one is in the film and the other is a credit song to kind of end it altogether. So we'll see exactly how they end up utilizing these 2 new songs, but that is a little daunting to think about, that you're trying to take a beloved musical and you're adding 2 new original songs into it, because there was a little talk that they wanted to do a change to popular. They wanted to give it more of a hip-hop upbeat tempo to it, but Ariana Grande was one that spoke out, no, you do not change that song.
Love that. Yeah.
We are doing it exactly as the musical did it. No, we are not changing it. And they were like, okay, we're not changing it. So like they know the importance of these songs and the music to this movie and to this musical.
Yeah, it's a huge risk. We'll see if it pays off for them, but it's going to be one that a lot of people are going to be interested to see how they follow up on it, because like I said, Part 1, in my opinion, is a perfect musical adaptation. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Go back into our archives in our last episode and see, all of the love and the praise that we gave to the movie. So warranted, so deserved. But Part 2 is going to be very interesting. It sounds like they're taking some risks, and we'll see if it pays off for them.
And I think, are we supposed to have that next year?
Yeah, 2025 into next year. So we have that coming around the same time. It appears it'll be next November, and I cannot wait. It's going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be exciting, especially we already see how the box office going for Wicked, that there's going to be so much hype for Part 2 when it comes out next year.
For sure, and it's one we'll keep an eye on and keep news coming for it as we hear it for stuff like that. That was some good insight for that. So now I want to move us into our movie review of the week, which is Moana 2, the follow-up to the wildly popular Moana from Disney. Moana is known for stunning visuals, amazing songs like You're Welcome, How Far I'll Go, Shiny, so many incredible songs in that. And it's a big one to live up to because it was extremely popular, but it gets a sequel here. We got the continuation of the story with Moana now being a wave rider. She's on a quest to find more people like her to kind of interconnect their community and their, get to know all of the people of the ocean, of the seas. And she sets off on this journey to, find these people, and, it just kind of takes off from there. And you get, a lot of your favorite characters make a return in this film as well. And it's a brand new adventure from Moana. And I'm curious to see what you thought about it.
Yeah, to me, I was a little disappointed by it because Moana 1 was such a great film. Like, it dealt with, they're dealing with Te Fiti, and so this is a goddess that is angry because something was stolen from her. So it's causing all this pain to happen throughout the world and to their island, where things are rotting and the fish are going away. And she learns that she has this connection to the ocean, and she sets out and she finds Maui. And there is a much deeper connection to how their tribe lives and their culture and everything else. And this definitely felt like a sequel that just pushed past all the kind of depth that it had and just kind of went straight forward with the kind of a basic kind of story that wasn't as connected to itself as the original was, because this originally was going to be a series. So they were doing a sequel to Moana as a series. And I think you kind of feel that this was a series that was turned into a movie, because it is like, it was enjoyable and it was fun. There was some funny moments and stuff to it, but I felt probably the biggest problem with this film was the music. The first Moana was one of the biggest soundtracks out there. Me and my kids listen to it all the time. I could still sing so many songs with them from it. There really wasn't a memorable song to me from this film. Like, it almost felt like the musical numbers that they did. Like, they included some of the ones from the first movie remixed a little bit, but the new songs, it didn't feel like it fit the movie to me. Like, Encanto had an incredible soundtrack. It fit the movie so well. Great songs, memorable songs. I felt like these Moana 2 songs felt like they were from Encanto, which isn't a bad thing for Encanto, but it didn't fit Moana. Like, the beat, the tone, the lyrics, everything behind these songs, because, of course, they didn't get Miranda Manuel back to do the music for this one and stuff, and it kind of showed that the songs just didn't have the same impact as the original did. Like, my kids loved the film. I'll give that my kids gave a lot of praise. They had a lot of fun with the film, but I couldn't tell you a name or a memorable moment from one of these songs that happened in the movie because they were kind of forgettable.
See, I'm kind of surprised that you have that take because I honestly disagree with that. Like, I thought the music connected to it really well. I think it kept up, similar, a lot of love to that culture. And, I think there were some really good songs. Like the Chihu song was a lot of fun. You get, Dwayne Johnson as Maui, kind of singing, kind of rapping at the same time. You get that kind of, not quite as well as You're Welcome, but I think the Chihu song was really well done. There's a song called Get Lost in there that I thought was really well done as well because, they're trying to find this sunken island that's supposed to be like the focal point of bringing all these cultures together. Like, it's like the center focal point of, something that's been sunk into the sea that they're trying to get Maui to raise out of the depths of the ocean to kind of help connect all these islands and bring all these people together, which is kind of her mission statement here. And because she sees that in a vision, she sees like, this is a quest I need to go on. I need to find this place. And I really thought they did a fine job of kind of setting your expectations of what they wanted to do and how they got there. And there was still a lot of fun with a lot of the other characters. She gets a crew for this one. It's not a solo adventure for her. It's not just her and Maui. It's her with a couple extra characters one of which I found was hilarious, like a Maui fanboy who's also very well versed in the stories of their culture that kind of understood their importance and gets to live out his dream of being a part of one in this story. And I think they did a really good job of connecting that. Was it as emotionally in depth and connected to the culture as the first one? I don't think it was, but I still think the plot in this movie was good. Like, it was fine. You set very clear expectations of what she wanted to do, and they got there in a way that was fun and adventurous and I think made sense. So I'm kind of surprised that you had the take on it that you did.
Yeah, I'm interested to see your take on that too, because it felt like I could feel that it was a TV series that had been changed to a movie. Like, Kazugamo, it moved very quickly. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on the island with her family and stuff. We're introduced that she has a sister and there's this bond between them, but you get kind of very little in between their bond and stuff. And then she's back out, then she's back again. Or now she needs a crew to do this adventure while she did the first one alone. Yeah. Well, let's throw in a bunch of characters, which they all have to fit. Certainly you've got a shipbuilder and you have, the person who could keep your food ready and plentiful for you, and you have the Maui fanboy and you have all that stuff. But I don't know, it was just something with me that the songs didn't connect. It didn't feel as memorable as the original. Like, it's fine if they did something new and original with the songs, but I don't know, it was the beat and the tempo or something to it just didn't feel like it fit Moana, that it fit this. Because if you look back at the first soundtrack, they all flowed together really well, and I think these all had kind of a different feel to each one, that they just didn't mesh together for me. And it's also because the villains in this movie, the main antagonists we have here, they're very thin. We don't get a whole lot on them. Like, we get a small connection with the lore of the island and stuff and what's behind there, but we really didn't get much to who these villains are, why they are doing what they're doing, how long have they been doing it. Like, it was just kind of you got that connection with Te Fiti. You've got all that building, and this one you just kind of didn't. It missed out on a lot of connections to me, and I think that's what made the songs not have as big of an impact, because they didn't feel like they were connecting to the story as much. Like, there was some fun to them, but it didn't have that, like, if you gave me Moana 1 or Moana 2 to listen to, it would be Moana 1 100% of the time that I would listen to the soundtrack to, because it has such good, memorable songs. And I just felt like these just were not memorable to me.
Yeah, and it's surprising because I think usually you and I have very similar takes on films, and I think this is one of the rare times that I think we disagree on one, because I think they did a good job of connecting emotionally to these things. Like, the motivations for the villains aren't as strong in the first one, and I'll give you that, but I still think, like, with the story that they were trying to tell, that they were effective in what they were trying to do. Like I said, they set very clear expectations of what she was trying to do, what she wanted to do, and I think the songs that were the main part of the film connected with the story they were trying to tell. It may not have the same emotional depth on the, importance of family and things like that, but it was more like they were pertinent to the story that was being told, which I think is a different take on music in a film from the first one. But I think at the same time, they were effective for what they were trying to do. Like, you have Maui, who is, he's kind of doing his own thing. Like, he's off on his own, but they wound up having to save Maui in this film. And like, I think it does an effective job of moving things along, but it very much did feel like the second chapter in a 3-chapter film, which
it was definitely setting up for a third.
Because it by the end, there is, something that happens to Moana in this film that, could be a very interesting thread moving into the third film, which is going to be a kind of an amalgam of the first two, really. If you see, there's a mid-credit scene that does very much set up a third film that is, kind of an amalgam of the first two movies here, where you see certain people coming together to potentially be the threat of the third one, the villains in the third film. So it's very much the second part of a 3-part story at minimum, right? So I think for that reason that it was effective in doing what it needed to do, and it's setting up what is going to be very obviously a third part. So I'm excited to see where they take it and where they go with it. Obviously, we have a live movie adaptation coming as well, featuring, like, The Rock is playing Maui in the live action film as well. So, like, it's going to be interesting to see how different that could be, or if it's going to be, like, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I think it did an effective job of, tying everything together in a way that made sense. Is it does it have as much emotional depth as the first one? No, but that's also not what I think they were trying to do with this film also, which I think is a different way of looking at it than maybe you were trying to look at it. Like, you were still trying to have that same emotional connecting depth that you've got from the first one, which is fair. It's a fair expectation to have, but at the same time, I don't think I was looking for that, or they kind of laid that out as what they were trying to do with this film. But I think what they were trying to do, they were effective at doing it.
It's interesting that we have such a differing view on it. Like, I didn't hate the film. I had fun with it. There was some enjoyment to it. I just felt like it, in the end, it felt a little phoned in to me. Like, it wasn't exactly like, because, going from being a series to coming to a movie, and it did kind of feel like that. So it kind of felt like they weren't full all in on, making this epic sequel to Moana. It was kind of more like, well, we have this, we're not exactly feeling it as a series, let's see if we can cut it up, break it down, put it into a film and see how it works, because we know that, The Rock and all the voice actors didn't come into this film until, like, the very, very end, right at the end. Like, we hear it's announced, and we didn't even know if they were going to be a part of it. So, like, they had really no plans of where exactly they were going with this from a film perspective. And I felt that in the film. Like, to me, I felt that in the story, that it was a little thinner, that it was, I mean, they were pretty straightforward with what they did. Like, it just starts up like, hey, we got this going on, let's go. I think the first one, you did have more build up and everything else to it. So yeah, I just felt like it felt a little bit phoned in on it. Like, it wasn't a terrible movie. Like, in the end, for me, for Moana 2, I did feel that it just didn't have the same impact that Moana 1 was. That the music didn't hit to me the same way. Like, me and my kids didn't leave the theater singing any of the songs or thinking about any of the songs. It was kind of forgettable to me after we got out of that. I would probably put it around a 6, but for my kids' enjoyment, I would add an extra to that and put it around a 7, just because of how much I did enjoy it. Because in the end, this was made for kids, so they had a love and appreciation and a big enjoyment from it. So I would give it a 6, plus their enjoyment would take it up to a 7 for me. Like, it could have been better. Like, I think for me, like, the music was a huge part of the first one, and yeah, it's whatever the disconnect was for me, that it just didn't feel like the music had as big of an importance to the story and the movie overall as the first one did, and I was kind of expecting to have that connection.
Yeah, and I get that, and I'm also wondering if, maybe you didn't have the background info of the fact that it was originally intended to be a series, and they wound up kind of changing it into making it more of a film, that you would have adjusted your expectations for the film and adjusted for the show, and could have put you in maybe a different headspace to go and enjoy the film. Because to be honest, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't thinking about any of that when I went to go see the movie, and I think it may have affected my enjoyment in a different way that it may have affected yours. But it's interesting to see you would have put it at a 6, and then adding the element for your kids bumped it up to a 7. I'm going to give it a 7.5. Like, that was where I kind of landed on it, like initial gut, and after thinking about it, I'm kind of sticking with that. By no means is it as good of a movie overall as Moana 1. Like, that's pretty lofty to live up to. Moana is one of the best of the more recent Disney animated features. That the combination of emotional depth and incredible songs and things like that puts that in such a high standing that that's probably like a 9 out of 10 film overall. But this one is a 7.5. I think is a good enough sequel, a good enough middle story to a third potential trilogy that it has fun songs. I think the songs serve the story that they're trying to tell really well. It's not as emotionally in depth and connected to family, but I think there's some family connection in that, especially the bond that it really harps on between Moana and her younger sister. I think was the stronger emotional bond than the overall family in the island that we got in the first one, where it's my people, my family, my connection to the island. The more of that emotional connection was, I'm doing this for my sister, for the future of, our people, and she's kind of using her sister as that vessel. And you see kind of that emotional connection that they have, that sisterly bond that they have, where her sister doesn't have that connection to the ocean that she does, so she takes a little piece of something that her sister gives to her and puts it in the locket to kind of take a piece of her with her wherever she goes. Like, I think they did a fine enough job in that I think kind of helped keep that element in the story that they were trying to tell. But this very much feels like the second part of a 3-part story, which is what it is. And I think for that reason, it gets enough of a, warranting a 7.5 for me, that I think that is a fair grade for this film. Is it better than the first? No, but it's still not a terrible film. It's a good movie. It's a fun family movie that I think kids will enjoy. Is the soundtrack going to be as iconic as the first one? Probably not, but it's got some good songs in it that I think serve the movie.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it to me, because, Moana is one of my favorites that I was able to introduce to my kids and have a good time to the kids. So there was a lot to kind of live up to for that. And I think that was in the back of my mind, like, all right, well, they started out as a series and they shifted to a movie. That doesn't always tend to be good if they start in one direction, they move to another, because we've got a ton of examples of that. And they have to shift halfway through it, or even more than halfway through it, to something else that it may not, because it did give me a little bit of those old, from our childhood, of the kind of straight to DVD sequels that we got to The Little Mermaid and The Lion King and Aladdin and stuff. Like, there was some heart and good behind it, but it just didn't have that same feel and appeal and just effect that it had. And it's also, you're looking at, you had Inside Out and Inside Out 2, and Inside Out 2 had such a great emotional impact. It was a great, fantastic sequel and stuff to it, and Moana did, compared to that and compared to how good the original was, it did feel a little bit more like this was almost like a straight-to-DVD type of film that got a theatrical release. Like, it's not a terrible film. Like I said, I put it as a 6 with my kids' enjoyment. Kids absolutely loved it. I know all the kids in the theater, when we saw it, was having a great time with it, which in the end, that's what matters most, is that the kids got the enjoyment out of it. Yeah. But it just felt a little fun. So yeah, it's interesting that we had such a different kind of reaction and feel to this movie, because I can see a lot from your aspect and what you saw in it, but it didn't hit the same way to me.
This is one that I think is going to be a fun thing for you and I to talk about when it comes out on streaming, if you give it another chance, and
I'm going to watch
could
it
be
again.
In a different headspace. You have kids, you're going to watch it more than once, right?
20, 30 more times at least.
That's going to be a thing that happens. But I'm going to be curious to see what you see when you give it a second chance, now that we've kind of talked about it and had that discussion, and you kind of take my perspective into it when you see it again, and I'm curious to see if it changes your mind, because that's definitely one that I think that we're gonna want to revisit, probably not in the podcast, but definitely one that you and I could talk about, offline, of going and like seeing it again, seeing it in a different setting, and see if you feel differently about it now that we've kind of had this talk. And that's the fun part about doing these. We're not always going to agree in how we see a movie. Like, there will be times where you and I go see a movie together and we could have completely different experiences with it, whether it's external factors affecting our headspace going into seeing a movie, or anything else that could potentially affect how we view it. But that's going to be a fun one to go back and revisit for sure.
It's also really intriguing to see the difference, because I have two daughters, and you currently don't have any kids or anything. So you, without the kids, had more enjoyment than I did with being the one that has the kids. So I could see the enjoyment through my kids and stuff. But yeah, it was just, I remember coming out of the theater, the first one, having songs stuck in my head and singing, and us listening to the soundtrack on the way home and everything else. And we didn't have that with this one. So that's where it felt a little disjointed and disconnected for me, that we just like, okay, the songs were okay, and I had fun with it. But like I said, the villains did feel a little bit like TV villains. Fair. Like, have your villain of the week, or you have the villains that you just lightly weave through a series and stuff. That's kind of what the villains felt like. So there wasn't that, as you mentioned, there wasn't that big connection with it. But it is a fun family film to go see. It's already doing gangbusters with the box office and everything else, so it's going to do good. But it's also going to be interesting to compare between like what Disney's done this year, of which was the better sequel. And you can come to our Discord, come into our comments stuff too. Like, which sequel from Disney did you enjoy more this year? Was it Inside Out 2 or Moana 2? Like, which one had the bigger impact on you? I'm voting Inside Out 2 for that one, just because I feel like it was a more solid, complete film that hit all the emotional elements that you were looking for. Moana 2 did kind of leave me wanting for a little bit more. Like, I think it would have been better if they went straight in as a movie, that this is what they were going to do, instead of it changing halfway through that, all right, we're stopping the series, we're going to turn it into a movie now.
Sure, and that's absolutely fair, but I would say, yeah, it's definitely going to be doing very well at the box office. I know when I went and saw it, my showing was completely sold out. It was chock full of people from bottom to top, and it's good to see that it's doing well and that it's having that connection. I had a similar experience in the theater as well with my viewing experience, because tons of kids, all family stuff. I was probably the only person there without kids, but that's fine. I have no problem going and seeing those movies and enjoying them just as much without them. But it was definitely one that got a lot of enjoyment from the kids, got a lot of laughing and clapping and cheering along. So it was definitely a lot of fun to go see.
So Moana 2 is in theaters now. Go check it out with your family, without the family, whoever you need to go see it with. Grab some friends, go check it out. It is a fun adventure. Just don't go in expecting it to be as good as the original, because a lot of the times they don't. A lot of times sequels, I mean, you have those Empire Strikes Back and those Spider-Man 2 that go above and beyond with the original, but this one kind of had a different development and stuff to it. But it's a fun adventure. If your kids love the first Moana, there's no reason not to take them to go see Moana 2.
For sure, and it's in theaters now. Go check it out.
So moving on, it is December now, and we want to talk about our Christmas favorites, because, Halloween has a lot of stuff that people watch, but when you think about TV specials or episodes or movies or something that people watch over and over again, Christmas time is where most of those classics come from. Like, when you're thinking of those holiday classics, your brain is going to go straight to Christmas, more often than not, because, Halloween gets a lot of horror stuff, but, Christmas is very, very focused on the holiday and on Christmas time. And we do see some horror films and stuff with Christmas as well, which I don't think we have any of those to kind of go in here too. But I wanted to kick it off with one that, kind of paint a picture of this film, that you have, it's Christmas time. So you've got some Christmas music playing. You have a husband and wife who are estranged, that things haven't been going the greatest, but he decides to fly out to her Christmas party on Christmas Eve to try to make their relationship work again. Like, he wants to spend the holidays with his kids and his wife, so he's doing whatever it takes out here at the Christmas party to try to make things better. And it doesn't go as he thought it would, and there ends up being some things that stands in his way of being able to connect with his wife and get back to his kids as he expected, but he is going to give everything he can to make sure that works out. So, Christmas Eve setting, you've got a Christmas party, you've got Christmas music. So this, of course, is the Alan Rickman classic Christmas movie this is Die Hard. It is not Christmas until I see Hans Gruber fall off a Nakatomi Tower. Like, it is a Christmas movie. There's a huge debate about Die Hard being a Christmas movie, but it has all the elements. It's set at a Christmas party. There is Christmas music. There is snow. There is ho 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 being said and Santa hats and everything else going on. It's a love story in the end about a husband and wife trying to reconnect, that he's trying to get back to his kids and everything else. He shows up with presents. Like, it has all the elements to be a Christmas movie, and it is one that I kick the holidays off, like probably tonight or tomorrow, or when after we film this or when this is airing, I'm probably going to turn on Die Hard to kick off my Christmas movie watching, because that is one that, and I send him screenshots almost every year of like when Die Hard comes on in the intro and it says Die Hard in the airport and everything, like, hey, Christmas can now begin.
Die Hard is 100% a Christmas movie. Leave a comment in the video telling us whether you think it is or it isn't. I love that debate. It's one of my favorite debates. One of my good friends and I have this fun argument every year where I'm like, it's about time to watch my favorite Christmas movie, and he's like, don't say it's Die Hard. We know it's not. And I'm like, it's 100% Die Hard. Die Hard is absolutely a Christmas movie. It's got all of the elements. If you want to make that debate, one of my favorite gag gifts I've ever given and been a part of giving somebody was giving my friend an advent calendar of Hans Gruber falling from Nakatomi Plaza, one step for being one of the 25 days of Christmas. Mm-hmm. And it's so brilliant. It's so funny. And it's one of my favorite gag gifts I've ever given, but it is a holiday movie. It's got all the holiday themes in it. And it's a fun debate to have with people. Even people who've made the movie said it's not, but any Christmas list you go and Google best Christmas movies of all time, guess what movie's on that list? It's Die Hard. It's on virtually every single list. And it is absolutely one to watch around the holiday season. It's not one you have to watch at Christmas, but you have to watch it at Christmas time. Yep. So, like, it's so fun. It's such an over-the-top action film. Bruce Willis, Alan Rickman, certain catchphrases that we can't say on this podcast that everybody knows what they are. And it's such a fun movie overall anyway. Mm-hmm. But the fact that we can loop it in with Christmas classics is so much fun, and it's such a fun debate to have.
Ho, 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 I've got the machine gun now.
Right.
And I forget the character. I've watched it so many times, I can't remember the character's name, the real snobby guy who's trying to negotiate with Hans. Like, I would say that is some of the best acting in the movie, because how can you be that unlikable and horrible of a person? Because that was such a terrible character. Like, Hans Booby, like, it's like, he was such a terrible character, but you love to hate him, and especially with everything that happens to him, it's like, all right, yeah, that guy, like, I can't, he's an extra villain in the movie because he is such kind of a terrible person. But yeah, I have to watch it. Like, I've watched it throughout the year as well and stuff, but it is one I watch at Christmas time, because this one is like, hey, this kicks off Christmas for me. Like, it's not your typical Christmas movie. That's what a lot of people have a problem with. It's an action movie about terrorists who are taking over this tower because of, what they have inside with these bombs and everything else that they're trying to do. And Alan Rickman is fantastic as Hans Gruber. Like, it's one of his best roles that he did, because he was just played such a good villain. Like, his voice and his mannerisms, how he holds himself, was just perfect for playing that character. And this is one that we kind of alluded to with the Gladiator talk, that Bruce Willis wasn't the first choice. Yeah. So originally it was Arnold and Sylvester Stallone. They were all the top picks to play this role, and they went with Bruce Willis, and the studio didn't have high hopes for it. They thought that this was going to be, I think it cost about $25 million to make. They thought this was going to be a bust, that it wasn't going to do very good. And we got, seven, eight Die Hard films in the end. And it kicked off a huge series that's huge for Bruce Willis, but also huge for the studio. So, like, they were very apprehensive. Like, we don't think Bruce is going to do good in this movie. And it is an iconic classic film now. And especially outside of Christmas, but for Christmas, it's iconic and classic.
I can't imagine Arnold saying some of the lines that Bruce Willis says in this movie, but this is a case of getting it right with the casting, getting it right with the story. It is a fantastic film on its own, not even being considered a Christmas movie. One, in my opinion, one of the best action movies of all time. Yep. I love it so much. It's one that I watch regularly every year, annually. Like you mentioned, just a perfect way to kick off a Christmas list. Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Come for me in the comments if you disagree.
Absolutely. you got to take on both of us because it is a Christmas movie.
We will champion that. And I want to move to my personal favorite Christmas movie. I love, there's a lot of good family emotional movies, but it's actually one coordinating with the outfit that you have on right now. And my favorite Christmas movie is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. So funny, so many quotable lines that I quote every single year at Christmas, but it's such a funny movie that just also happens to be a Christmas movie. My opinion, the best National Lampoon movie. So funny. One of the best comedies, in my opinion, ever made.
Absolutely.
Like, it is so funny, so good, but it's got some heart and some warmth to it as well, as absurd and over the top as it is in so many different ways.
Oh, absolutely incredible. I love National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Like, to me, it probably is the most quoted Christmas movie of all time. Like, yes. Elf and a few others have a lot of quotable stuff to it, but how many quotes came out of this movie? And it could even be the little ones with him chopping up the tree with the Jason, man, where are you going to put that? Bend over, I'll show you. And they're like just so many crafts, but also with Cousin Eddie and Randy Quaid with all that. But Chevy Chase was fantastic. Like, everybody was just so good with the difference between the families and how they're all having their judgmental stuff. And he's having, his moments with the perfume girl at, the mall, and Rusty shows up. You go, what?
See the tan lines, can you, Russ?
Like I said, it's one of the most quotable. Like, it's not for every part of the family. Like, it's got some more adult humor and adult stuff to it, but it is. I have to watch this every single year. Like, I'll probably start off with Die Hard and I go straight into National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation because it is that good. Like, I could never get tired of watching this movie, from the Christmas lights and all the issues he has with lighting that up to, the neighbors and the whole family dynamic. Like, it was just perfectly done. Yeah, it definitely is the best National Lampoons that they ever did. It's probably one of the best things that Chevy Chase ever did. It was just fantastically done. You get the road rage in the beginning with him trying to get the tree and everything that happened with that, and it's just fantastic. Like, it's just so much fun to watch at Christmas time.
Yeah, for you having Die Hard being the first movie you have to watch for the Christmas season, this movie is the one that kicks it off for me. Puts me in the Christmas spirit. It is so fun, so funny, so quotable. It is the absolute number one Christmas movie for me for that reason. I like to laugh. I love comedy movies more than just about anything, and this one, without question, makes me laugh every single time I watch it. I don't care how many times I've seen it. Makes me laugh still like it's the first time I've watched it. So many quotable lines, so much fun, and the perfect holiday movie for somebody like me.
Yeah, just if you haven't seen it, I don't know how you haven't seen it. Even if you're younger with the generation, like, it's so well known and it airs on so many different channels and stuff as well. If for some reason you haven't watched it, that's a must watch over Die Hard and everything else. To me, like, if you wanted one must watch from me for the Christmas season, it is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. It is just that good, that memorable, and it does get you in the Christmas. Like, I love Die Hard and everything, and it's one I say I have to kick it off with seeing Hans fall, but it really begins with Christmas Vacations because, when you think of Christmas and other stuff, that either you got the romance side or you got the comedy side. That's kind of the two areas you look at the most. Now, Die Hard has some funny moments to it, but it's a more serious action film that has a lot of violence and other stuff in it. But National Lampoon's is just incredibly well written, well acted. Everyone played their role so well. Even the little kids talking about Santa and what they haven't got and all that, like, just with Cousin Eddie's kids and everything. It's a fantastic Christmas movie. That's one of the best that's ever made, because I've watched all the National Lampoon stuff, but this is far and above, so high above all the others that it's not even comparable to the others. Like, this is a true Christmas classic.
Agreed. I'd say the original Vacation, National Lampoon's Vacation, was up there with it, but it's the closest one to that one, but it's far and away the best one in my opinion. I agree with that, and it's just so funny, so memorable, and just it's not Christmas season for me without that film.
Yeah, I'm going to head into the TV side. That we have a ton of specials and stuff that happen. This is another one that I have to watch every Christmas. We watch it multiple times. It has to be seen, and that is A Charlie Brown Christmas. Like, this is, along with Christmas Vacation, if you're looking for the family-friendly TV special. I know it's on Apple TV now. It's not airing on broadcast TV like we watched it as a kid and would watch every year. But there's something magical about A Charlie Brown Christmas, like from, you know, the musical elements of it, the humor, and kind of the darkness to it, because there is darkness because Charlie Brown is a depressed kid. He struggles with the holiday seasons, and you have Linus and everyone else telling him what the true spirit of Christmas is. And of course, he adopts the Charlie Brown Christmas tree, and they're looking at all the aluminum trees, and he wants this little guy that's, you know, bent and broken, but you know, he gets some harsh criticism from everybody else. Like, there's just something magical about that TV special. Like, when I finish National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, this is right up next after. Like, I've got to watch Charlie Brown multiple times during the Christmas season.
It is definitely a must watch as well. It's classic. It's a traditional holiday special, and I do not exaggerate when I say there are certain songs that when I hear them, they will be stuck in my head on a loop constantly. And every year, without fail, during this time of year, that Charlie Brown Christmas song with the piano, like
you break out into a Charlie Brown dance.
Yeah, you have to do the dance too. Like, it gets stuck in my head for hours, and I have to like frantically search to get something to replace it. But it's so catchy, such a hook. But it's a really fun story, like you said. I think you hit all the right notes on it. That I don't really have anything to add to it, because it's a perfect Christmas special. It's a short watch. It's an easy watch. You can watch it in 20 minutes practically. I think is what it is, like 22-minute runtime, I believe. Like it's a short watch, but it's one that you absolutely have to carve out time for, in my opinion, for Christmas.
Yeah, because we watched the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special Thanksgiving. It's not as good. It's okay. Sure. Of course, Charlie Brown's, you know, Halloween special is another that you have to watch during that time. But I think past all of them, it's a Charlie Brown Christmas is what's remembered more than any other Charlie Brown special as being the kind of pinnacle of Peanuts and the Charlie Brown gang. Is the Christmas special just hit all the right notes of kind of the emotional impact, the humor, and everything else, because they're putting on the Christmas play, and you know, you get Snoopy being Snoopy, kissing Lucy, and you know, making all the animal sounds, and you know, Pigpen. Of course, he puts on a new outfit, but all of his dust and dirt is still going through. Like it will always it stuck with me from a child to my kids as soon as they were old enough to really remember it. We were watching it when they were babies, but it's a must watch with them. And even if they're not watching it, I'll turn it on sometimes and just watch it myself, because it brings back so many great memories of my childhood. For
sure. And that's one that makes it so important for that. But I wanted to pair two TV specials kind of together, because they do tend to air back to back when they do air and they make it to TV. And that's, you know, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman. Those are like all-time classic stop motion animation type of movies that were, or not movies, TV specials that were done, and absolute classics that, you know, when they come on, it's like it's still appointment viewing for so many people, and for good reason. Like, those are two all-time classics. They've been around for decades at this point, but they're ones that you have to, like, if you got a to-do list of Christmas stuff to watch, they're on everybody's list. You got to watch Rudolph and you got to watch Frosty. Those are two awesome Christmas specials that are definitely in my rotation every year. You know, I like quoting Yukon Cornelius. It's just so much fun, because he's just so over the top and so fun, and it's an all-time classic that I think should always be in somebody's rotation.
I absolutely love Rudolph, and I love Frosty as well. Like, how many kids in the 70s, 80s, and 90s who just heard Happy Birthday! Yeah. Know exactly, hey, that's Frosty the Snowman. And when wintertime goes around and we get enough snow, I am Frosty. So I'll get a sled, my kids get on my back, and I will sing the song and go down the hill with them riding on my back as Frosty the Snowman. But as I get older and a little more cynical and everything about stuff, when you really dive deep into the story of Rudolph, like, everybody's a terrible person in that movie in the end. Like, Santa is a terrible person, because in the end, he only gives a crap about Rudolph because he could help him go deliver the presents. He did not care about Rudolph at all until he found out that his nose glows bright enough to help him through, and all of his reindeer, like, all of them put down Rudolph and bullied him and treated him like crap. And the elves treated the dentist so badly because he didn't want to be a traditional elf. Like, they all treated him so terrible. Like the Bumble, everyone was scared of him and treated him like crap until they removed every one of his teeth and they've turned him into this submissive beast who could help him out now. Now they love him and everything. It's like, I still love it, but when as a cynical adult, I'm looking at it like, every adult and even kid outside of Rudolph himself and like Yukon and everything, like, they're terrible people. Like, they're bullies and terrible people.
Thanks for ruining Christmas, Brad. Jesus, that's kind of a.
And it's hard not to think about that. It gets more simple as you get older.
Yeah, you're right.
You really look at the storyline of it, but it's like, if you really dive deep into it, there isn't a great message about Rudolph. They only accept Rudolph because he's useful.
Right. You're absolutely right in your analysis of it. Though,
so sorry for ruining Christmas.
Yeah, thanks for ruining a timeless classic, Brad. Jesus. But no, you're right though. But it does kind of, on the surface, it does have that, like, you got to be accepting of people no matter what, because everyone has value and everyone has worth and everything like that. Those are good messages to send, especially around the holidays when, there are people out there that don't have families and, are kind of outcasts and you feel a little lonely around the holidays. And then that's normal for other people, but know that it's okay and you have worth and you have value too. So on the very surface level, without giving that very dark and cynical dive into it that you just gave us.
You're welcome.
Like, it does still have some positive messages that can come out of it, but yeah, man, that was dark, man.
It is a very quotable and memorable movie, but like I said, as I've gotten older and I've looked at it, watching with my kids, especially, trying to teach my kids about bullying and how to treat other people, that no matter their skin color or their sexual orientation or who they are, they deserve to be who they are. They deserve to be treated with respect. We don't treat people badly because something is different about them. We're all different in different ways. Like, we treat everyone with respect. So when I'm thinking and going through that as a parent and I'm looking at how things are, like, well, the dad treats Rudolph horribly. The rest of the reindeer treat him horribly. Santa treats him horribly. Like, there's a lot of bad bullying that goes on to it. Yes. But in the end, like, it's such good lighthearted when you get to the end. But when you truly think about it, like, the only reason they're so happy is because he became useful to them. Like, they found out, like, oh, your difference makes you useful. So it's a good message, but also not a good message. But because I've got in that mindset with my kids about trying to teach them the right way to treat people, my mind went to that darker element of it. Like, this is actually not a very positive film in the end, especially if you really think about it. Like, it has a lot of negative connotations to how he's treated, and like, he only gets accepted because he's useful.
Which is crazy. Thanks for not letting us watch that movie ever again.
Please still watch and enjoy it, but that stuck in my head now after doing that and going through my kids with all that. It's like, I can't view it the same. I still love it and I still have a great time with it. My kids love it and everything, because I haven't gone into that darkness with them at all, because I'm letting them be kids and enjoy it. But it is something I think about as a parent, because I have kids who are in elementary school and middle school that I have to worry about the bullying aspect and how other kids are going to treat them and how they treat other kids. So it's heavily on my mind when I see this special with them, is like making sure that they know that this isn't right how you treat somebody because they're different. If they're overweight, if they're tall, if they're short, if they're black, they're white, they're anything else, like, they deserve to be treated like human beings, because we are human beings. We're all the same underneath. We're all bones and tissue and everything else. We're the same underneath. We have different cultures and everything else, but that doesn't mean that you should treat anybody differently or wrong. Like, you show respect until they don't show you respect, and then that can change it, but you don't treat someone wrong just because of the way they look or a feature that they have. Like, we all have something that we don't like about ourselves or that's wrong about ourselves. Like, no one is 100% positive on themselves. And that's kind of how Rudolph is. He's taught to say, hey, this nose isn't right. You should hide it, and you should hide who you are. Like, well, no, you should be yourself. And people should be accepting of that and not judgmental about that. So that's kind of where it got my mind into the more darkness of that story, because I've had to think about that as a parent lately, especially with one going into middle school, of just exactly how Rudolph was treated as something that I can use as a positive reinforcement or as a reinforcement to my kids to show, like, this is an acceptable behavior. Like, this is a fun special to watch until I was a Debbie Downer. but it's something that you need to be aware of. Like, Rudolph is perfectly fine as he was.
This has been a We'll Bring the Popcorn Christmas special. No, it's like that was beautiful though. That's the message you want to send though. Like that's how we should be treating people, and that's kudos to you for instilling that into your awesome girls and stuff. Like it's you're absolutely right. Like that's the message you should take away from those things. Like your differences are useful, and you have value despite the fact that you're different. Despite like we're all unique. We're all we all have our own quirks, and we all have our own, things that make us who we are. And that's the beautiful part about it. And it doesn't need to be shunned, and it doesn't need to be, isolating, and, you shouldn't be ostracized because you are different. And those are good messages to send, and that's how we should be treating people. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. And that's why these conversations need to happen. But yeah, those are the type of messages you want to send following out of that. And like you said, despite the very dark turn that you took for this, I think eventually you get to that message with this. But that's what makes it a good holiday special, is the fact that you can have those conversations too, because it's a perfect example to use when kind of making your point, right? So it's for that reason, that's what it makes it a really great holiday special, I think.
You can see it in two vastly different ways. Like
Yeah.
you can see the more cynical, darker aspect of it, or you can see, like, in the end, oh, hey, Rudolph is accepted and having fun, and he saves Christmas. And, there is quite a lot of quotable stuff in there, especially like I'll hit my kids with the, who wants a Charlie in the box? The misfit toys and all that stuff. And Frosty, like, it is very memorable. The second one wasn't as good because you're dealing with, you get John Goodman, who ends up playing Frosty in that one. They're dealing with the de-icing spray, that was kind of a phoned in special in that. But the originals with Frosty the Snowman, and just kind of the message it had too about being accepting and showing the magician like he shouldn't be treating people like it is, and he needs to be doing right, and just all that. Like Frosty is such a memorable one. Of course, memorable songs that you're going to be singing of those, along with the Christmas carols. You've got the Frosty song, and you've got a ton of songs from Rudolph that's silver and gold, and everything that is sung and remembered so fondly from those as well. So, but yeah, they are the pinnacle Christmas specials that, on top of Charlie Brown, those are two of the ones that you think of more often than not when you're thinking about a holiday special.
Absolutely. There's so many classic TV specials. I wanted to group those two together because they always air together. Like CBS does a big advertisement for us, like, hey, we're airing Rudolph and Frosty. Like, this is one of our few showings. Like, I think that last year they only showed it once, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because you've had a lot with the TV rights that you're not being able to see them on broadcast TV as much, that you have to go to streaming or somewhere else to be able to find, which is sad. Like, they should still be available for anybody, which, broadcast TV is still out there. It should, even if you have it on streaming, it should be out there on a platform that's easier for everybody to watch. Like, it still should be aired. Like, I think ABC and CBS is where most of these specials aired between Charlie Brown and Rudolph and everything. They should still be aired on those broadcast channels so that everybody has access to it. I mean, you can get them on, like, I've got Blu-rays of the holiday classics that have Rudolph and Frosty and everything else, so we can pop those in if it doesn't come on. But those should still be out there to be watched easily by anybody for the holiday season.
Absolutely. And there's other classic TV ones. We're not going to have time to kind of go through them all, but there's like, Year Without a Christmas, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, like a lot of those classic ones also that are, really popular around there. But then we also can kind of switch back over to film a little bit, and one of my favorites is the Santa Claus, which is the Tim Allen classic. It's spawned 2 sequels and even a TV series now on Disney Plus. But that original Santa Claus is classic Christmas. It's got humor. It's got some funny one-liners. It's very quotable as well. Some of my favorite holiday quotes are from this movie as well. That's kind of where we talk about our guilty pleasures. For me, are always things that are very quotable and things that keep your mind on that movie and where they come back to. This is very much one of those movies, and an absolute must-watch every holiday season.
Oh, I love and adore the first Santa Claus. The other two are watchable, but they don't have that same connection and impact that the original had. Like, of course, Tim Allen was in the middle of just how huge he was with Home Improvement and everything else, and doing this, and he's playing that snarky, sarcastic dad who's he works for a toy company, but he's a very absentee dad. And he learns a good lesson in the end as he becomes Santa Claus about being a father and about what it takes to, be Santa Claus and all that. And yeah, there's such great one line. Him and Judge Reinhold play off of each other so well. And I still it makes me crack up so much at the end of it when, Scott Calvin, Santa Claus, drops down the mystery date for the mom and the Oscar Mayer weenie whistle for him. And, his eyes light up when he finally sees Scott Calvin as Santa Claus. It's that this look in Judge Reinhold's eyes because he's like, yeah, and he shakes himself off. He gets those big puppy childlike eyes, and he lets himself get lost in a moment of Santa, and then he cuts himself. I laugh so hysterically at that scene every single time I watch this. My kids are obsessed with it. We watch all three. We've watched a series. We still have another season. Tim Allen's filming schedule didn't allow him to get that next season in for this holiday, but apparently 2025 we may, if they still go forward with it, we may have another season of that series, which was fun. It had some great cameos of some of the younger actors who are now grown up and having them in there and kind of continuing the tradition of it. But the original Santa Claus is such a fun, and it was also hit while we were big fans of Tim Allen, and it was just kind of the perfect vehicle for him that it just hit every chord and struck everything right. Such great humor, and it's a great holiday film to watch.
Great lesson, very funny, very quotable. Hits all the notes for me for a holiday classic, and it's one that I have to absolutely watch every single year. It's definitely one on the list.
Yeah, I'm going to toss out Elf into this because who, of course, doesn't like Elf? This became probably one of the last real modern holiday classics that have hit. You got Jon Favreau directing Will Ferrell as a human who had been, snuck into Santa's bag and raised by elves. And of course, we've got a lot of the actors now that have passed away because we have, I think at least 3 actors. You have Bob Hope that's passed away. You have his dad and James Caan has passed away. Scott Caan, of course, is his son. And then you had Santa himself has passed away. So you've lost a lot of people. But it was also one that I think people saw Zooey Deschanel in a different light because with her, you look at her in New Girl and then look at her in Elf, what bangs and a different hair color. She had a different attitude. You got to, first see that she could really sing, and you got, that some fun duets with her and Will Ferrell. But there is nobody else but Will Ferrell who could play Buddy the Elf. He has that childlike innocence to him that just made this movie be so much more incredible than it really, if you looked at it on paper, wasn't going to be very good, but Will just delivered everything. You felt so sympathetic for him. You just got that he is this fish out of water that doesn't know how to be a real human, and he has just got this innocence to him, and it was just such fantastically acted, so great humor, a lot of quotable stuff in it too. It's one of the more perfect modern Christmas classics that have come out.
I agree for all the reasons you said. One of my favorite things to still kind of jokingly, when I say bye to my friends, it's bye, buddy, hope you find your dad. to just yell out as a quote. And it's so fun that it is one of the last real modern Christmas time classics as far as one that people still want to throw into their rotation every single year for that reason. And it's one that for good reason makes its way into everyone's classic broadcast TV airs it all the time, and it's one that plays all around. And like you said, on paper, it had no business being as good as it wound up being because you even see. I remember seeing the trailer for it. I'm like, this looks terrible. This doesn't look like a fun. It just looks like over the top Will Ferrell yelling and screaming and being ridiculous. But there's more depth to the movie than you think when you give it a chance and watch it, and it's a lot of fun. And for all of those reasons, I think it has to fall into that holiday classic that made its way into my rotation every year. That I got to find a day to make a point to watch that. So it's definitely worth being on that list for sure.
Like I said, Will Ferrell, no one else, even much as I love Jim Carrey and other things, he perfected that role. It was just he brought that childlike innocence. He made you compassionate to him while he's doing over the top crazy stuff. Like, it was really fantastic that they were able to pull out something like that, because they spoof Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in the beginning with the kind of claymation stuff with the narwhal, and as you said, with "Bye, buddy, I hope you find your dad," and you sit on a throne of lies, and you got a great Peter Dinklage cameo in there as well, as he's an angry elf. Like, there's so much quotable stuff out of that. But I do want to go ahead and toss back over to some TV specials. These are a little more obscure. I'm going to put these together because they were a big part of my childhood that I have introduced my girls to, because they hit in a different way than I really expected to. So the first one I wanted to touch on was A Mickey's Christmas Carol. So this used to air every single year on, like, I think CBS and stuff. I think you can see it popping up on the Disney Channel, because it's also part of, I think, Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas or Mickey's Twice Upon a Christmas that it's aired. But I originally saw it by itself on broadcast TV because I love the Christmas Carol story, the Ebenezer Scrooge story, but they actually took this kind of serious. Like, there's some humor to it, but there's heart, and there is a lot of kind of drama and everything else to it, because get Scrooge as Ebenezer Scrooge, and you got that introduction, and you get Tiny Tim with Mickey and everything else. So, like, and that was, kind of heartbreaking when you deal, like, this was one of the more serious adaptations of a story that I think I've seen Disney do when it comes to using Donald and Goofy and Mickey and all of them. Like, there was a lot of raw emotions, and it dealt with how bad of a person Scrooge is. Like, they didn't shy away from it. They went full in. Like, it surprised me. And it's one I still have to show my kids every single year because I love it so much. Like, they don't ask for it. I put it on because I want to watch it. And I don't care if they're watching it with me or not. I'm going to sit down and watch A Mickey's Christmas Carol because I love it that much.
It's such a dad move for you. Yeah, I love that. But it's so good. It's really, really good. Like, it's one that I absolutely watch every year as well. And I kind of want to piggyback off of it and add a Muppets Christmas Carol to it if we're going to pair the Christmas Carol stories, because the Muppets Christmas Carol is every bit as good too.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's fantastic, phenomenal. Michael Caine as Ebenezer Scrooge is amazing in this. There's great songs, a ton of fun. It's such a wonderful take on it too. And those two are actually two that, for whatever reason, I find myself watching back to back at the same time. Like, I'll start with Mickey and then throw the Muppets one on right after it, because Mickey's Christmas Carol is shorter, but the Muppets Christmas Carol is more of a full movie, and it's fun to pair them together. But yeah, like, those are incredibly classic tellings of that story that really is an incredible, like a book, like a really incredible book that it's based off of. And those are the two best adaptations of that, in my opinion, are the Muppets version and the Mickey version, which is ones that I absolutely have to play every year.
Yeah, because the Jim Carrey CG Christmas Carol movie, it was okay. Sure. It's fun. Like, he tried to play it off serious and stuff. It's kind of that with the Polar Express, where it kind of had that weird, just, I don't know. The animation looked good, but it also looked rough, and
Agreed.
It was weird, but it went dark with how it handled that. Like, it didn't pull any punch, but yeah, Mickey's Christmas Carol after, but I do love a Muppet Christmas Carol. So I've seen Michael Caine interact with Muppets. Like, I mean, what else do you need than them going together? But the other obscure special that I want to throw in is the Garfield Christmas. Like, when we were kids in the 90s, the Garfield TV series was pretty big, and they put out this Christmas special that was also kind of surprising because, John goes back home to his family, and they're having a big, Christmas stuff, and you've got over the top with, the clown and everything else, but there's a very touching, heartwarming story underneath it, because so Odie makes Garfield this back scratcher for Christmas, and Garfield is looking for stuff to make for him, but he ends up finding letters from the grandma, and the grandpa had passed away, and he presents those letters to grandma. And there's a really touching moment there where it brings it down to kind of like, she's very emotional, because she can be over the top playing the piano and going really fun over the top, but that moment still sticks with me because it went from what I'm expecting from a kid's special, went really emotional with her reminiscing about the grandfather that she dearly misses, and the love that they had, and all the letters she wrote, and how appreciative she was of it. Like, that still stuck with me now as an adult, because it was emotional that I was not expecting from Garfield.
Yeah, and it's definitely one you weren't like. You definitely are right when you say that it wasn't one that you expected. It never hit on me for that reason. Like as a kid, watched it. Like I enjoyed it, but I think I appreciated it more when I became an adult and started, losing family members and having that emotional connection and that longing and that missing. Like if you know anything about me, I lost my dad, 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago now, right before Christmas. So hitting those emotional notes for me, like that's one that I found myself coming back to fairly recently that kind of hit on a different emotional level for me with stuff like that, and thinking about the loved ones that we've lost and stuff, and it definitely hits different now that I'm an adult. But I actually have more of an appreciation for it now than I did when I was a kid, because
Agreed.
like that one wasn't really in my rotation as much as a kid, and when I found it again as an adult, especially in the last couple of years, like that one was like, yeah, I have to kind of, like, as I'm processing the things emotionally that I do, every year now with the family members that I don't have, and it definitely hits different now.
Yeah, it definitely hits harder as an adult. In the last 10 years, I've lost my dad and a lot of uncles and all my grandparents and stuff. So that does affect you differently, and seeing it again as an adult, as I started, having my kids and showing them different stuff and going back through. And then I watch it again when they were, really little. I'm like, wow, this has a much bigger impact than I remember it having, because as a kid, you're focusing on the funny moments and all that, and the touching moments don't hit you as hard. It's when you become an adult and you do have loss and you have change and people you miss and stuff like that does hit me. I don't always watch that with the kids, but that is one that I watch to remember my dad and other stuff and my grandparents and stuff, to reflect on those that we've lost in time. Like, I didn't expect to have that deep of a connection to a Garfield Christmas special.
Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought, what's the one Christmas special that makes you the most emotional? A Garfield Christmas. Why? Go watch it. It makes perfect sense. But yeah, like it's definitely one that has a wonderful story and a wonderful message, and one that, is in addition to those classic TV specials. Like, for whatever reason, man, Christmas hits right with the TV specials. Like, it's the one time a year where the TV specials are the best. Like, you have some decent Halloween ones, but Christmas really has so many classic elements from it to draw from, that those are really good. Those are really good ones to pull from. Wanted to show a little extra love too to the Guardians of the Galaxy one that happened.
We love watching that.
That
that's instantly went into our rotation.
Instant classic as well. It's on Disney Plus that you can watch. Such a fun, like, if you want a superhero Christmas special, that's the 100% the one to have. It's a ton of fun. It has a heartwarming story as well. And
my wife still will quote Nebula yelling at Kevin Bacon, "You can't run from me, Bacon!"
Yeah.
Or "You can't escape." Like, she does that. That's her favorite part. I'm also like boggled by the musical number where his arm is spinning in a ridiculous way. Like, James Gunn crafted, which you didn't expect, kind of a perfect little holiday special that had so much fun with Kevin Bacon and bringing all the actors back, because he did this when he was doing Guardians 3. It's a great new Christmas special if you're into superheroes. It is a really fun one to watch. We did add to our rotation because it's just so over the top and silly and fun. And, Drax being obsessed with his little elf man, and Mantis liking the candy cane and stuff and offering it to the police officers when they're upside down after they've been flipped. Like, that gave them time to shine in such a great comedic way. And, having Kevin Bacon get on board to do the silliness and the over the top with it, like, it's a fantastic, more modern, fun superhero special, because I can't think of any other like superhero specials that they've even really done for Christmas, and this was just kind of really fantastically well done with that song. They said that is very memorable from the performance and everything else, but it's a great special.
It's so good. It's one that we definitely found in it, but you want to take one that we kind of left out because I wanted to combine it with a movie one, and because the animated version of it and the live action version of it, while similar to completely different things, is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Like, you have the classic animated one that is on TV every single year, but I wanted to combine it like with the one Jim Carrey made, which is fantastic and brilliant as well, and it's kind of a pairing of that same story done in two completely different ways, but both are absolutely worth being in rotations for Christmas.
It's really interesting to see how the feelings on Jim Carrey's Grinch, and Ron Howard directed, how the feelings have changed. Because when it originally came out, not a lot of people were a fan of it. It got a lot of backlash, but as the years have gone on, more and more people have fallen in love with it. Like Jim Carrey was, if you were doing a live action Grinch, who else? Like I don't even think, like as we said, no one else could play Buddy the Elf than Will Ferrell. No one else could do the Grinch in live action like Jim Carrey, because he's able to do the smile. And I still love one of the best outtakes that they talk about is when the Grinch pulls out the sheet underneath all of the silverware and platters they had on the table, and it was supposed to all come crashing down, but he did it so perfectly it didn't come off. So he ad-libbed of running in there and just knocking the entire table over and stuff. But like he was perfect as being the Grinch. And you got Taylor Momsen, so we know being big music fan stuff, she's gone on to lead the Pretty Reckless. She was Cindy Lou Who. She also did some acting stuff. She's more concentrating on her music now, which is crazy to see the difference between her then and then now. But I mean, it is a fantastic Christmas movie. I wasn't a huge fan of it when it first came out, but it's grown on me more as the kids really want to watch it. Is Benedict Cumberbatch's animated Grinch movie. Like it's turned into being one that I will watch out of these three. So you've got kind of three similar but different takes on the Grinch, which you've got the classic animated TV special, the live action Jim Carrey, and then the animated movie with Benedict Cumberbatch. Like I still think his Grinch was a little bit more subdued and kind of softer, but it's a fun animated film in the end. But I still got a soft spot for the original animated series. But Jim Carrey's movie is up there, and I would put kind of Benedict's in third, but it's not a bad movie. Like it's grown on me more now than when I first saw it. Like it's turned into being an entertaining watch. But yeah, the Grinch is, again, you can't have Christmas without the Grinch.
Absolutely. It's definitely one to mix in. And there's definitely one movie in particular that you can't have also out of your rotation, in my opinion, and that's Home Alone. Home Alone is an all-time classic, one of the best Christmas movies ever. Home Alone 2 I even paired with it because Home Alone 2 is not quite as good as the original, but it's still really good and really fun. A lot of fun, quotable movies. You'll know anything you know about me. I love to quote movies. That one's got so many quotable things. I love how some gimmicks carry over from the first movie into the second one with, the recording and trying to,
Kevin!
Yeah, all sorts of different things that go through the first two. The other movies behind it we won't talk about, but the first two classics on my rotation every year. Part of the 25 Days of Christmas that ABC Family, Freeform, whatever they're calling themselves now, would do every year. Those are always in it, and ones that I'll find myself watching. I actually watched Home Alone the other day with a group of my friends online, and we all watched it together, and it was a ton of fun. But that's one that absolutely has to be in everyone's Christmas rotation.
Yeah, and like perfectly cast as well. So you got Catherine O'Hara was just fantastic as the mom, is Kevin's mom in there. And of course, Macaulay Culkin, it's one of the biggest film series that he's ever done, with doing the first two and really skyrocketed him. Time where he also did My Girl and a bunch of other stuff. And it is a classic. Like there's just so much that you can quote and remember of it. If I hear the name Kevin, immediately in my head, it's her screaming Kevin, which she delivers perfectly. And got the jerk uncle and everything else, and you got Joe Pesci, and you have the Wet Bandits, who are just fantastic and everything that happens. Even though, if you want to be the cynical adult, Kevin would have killed them with the paint buckets and everything else he did to them, but we won't go that dark and deep into Home Alone here, but it is a fantastic, fun. That's even got some little bit of drama, and of course he's scared of the neighbor who ends up being actually he's a nice guy and everything. Of course, we lost that actor a few years ago as well. But yeah, Home Alone is the top. Home Alone 2 is fun. Heading to New York and having the toy store and the cameos and having Tim Curry in there, and you got Rob Schneider had a little cameo, a little bit part in there as the bellhop, and you've got some actors that you didn't really know of that big as kids until we got into adult to see what they did after that. But they are both classic and fun. And I saw a few years ago they opened up the McAllister home as an Airbnb, so you could stay there during the Christmas time, even though the outside looks the same. The inside's been redone, but it's a classic that if you think of Christmas, Home Alone is definitely up there with it. And it's just so well done. It's what Christopher Columbus film that he did such such a fantastic job, and it's such great memories of watching that movie as a kid.
And you cannot convince me that the McAllister dad was not a mafia boss. Modest income.
Where are they getting all this
that
money?
Huge freaking house that they had. No way he wasn't a mafia boss. Go read those theories online. Those are fun. Those are fun discussions.
Huge house in Chicago, so that's not going to be cheap.
Yeah, it's not going to be cheap at all. Even though it was, early 90s and, still. But it's a fun conversation to have about the movie, but definitely one that's for sure in the holiday rotation. It has to be. It's an all-time classic. It's one you have to watch every year.
I wanted to throw this one in because it is a favorite of my wife's and her mom's, and has become of our kids. And it's kind of more of an obscure one in Prancer, so that you have Sam Elliott plays the dad to this little girl who is kind of struggling with things at Christmas. They're, little poor, trying to figure things out, and she ends up finding a reindeer, and she's trying to help nurse it back to health. And it does get a little more dramatic. It's got some fun and humor and stuff to it, but I think it is one of the more lesser known Christmas movies. It's not a classic to everybody. It's not overall the best film, and it deals with different subjects in different ways, but they absolutely love it. Like my mother-in-law, Cindy, will say that it reminds her of my wife, because they do kind of look similar as kids and stuff, but that's something that they bonded together with, and now my wife bonds with our girls with watching Prancer, and I enjoy it too. Like Sam Elliott just never ages. Like he's looked the same since like 1865. Like the mustache is the same, his look is the same. I love him as an actor and
so
as a guy, especially. He was fantastic in The Ranch and just about everything that he's ever done, but in Tombstone. But it was interesting to see him in a Christmas, as film and stuff as well. But it is one that's kind of lower on there, but it is one that my wife and my girls really bond over, and that has special place in her heart for the holidays. And I wanted to make sure I got that mentioned in there.
Yeah, Prancer's one that I actually haven't seen, so it's one that I've wanted to check out, but I've heard really good things about it. You've talked about it before. Like it's one that I definitely want to check out. One that I wanted to give a little bit of love to. It's a more recent one. It's an animated movie on Netflix. It's called Klaus. If you've never seen it, it's actually really, really good. It's kind of a different take on the origins of Santa. So you have like this postmaster who sends his kid to postmaster school, and like he kind of flunks out, but he struggles with it, and like he gets kind of cast off into this town, and he winds up coming across this guy named Klaus, who through various reasons in the movie, like people start to believe that if you write him a letter, he'll send you a toy. It's kind of like a different origin telling of Santa Claus in a really, really well done way that I think if you have Netflix, go check that one out. Like it's one that I never really hear anybody talking about because it came out fairly recently, but it's actually a really, really, really good holiday film and a story told in a different way. And one of the better ones I've seen out of Netflix animation-wise that I don't think gets a ton of love, but if you've seen it, but definitely one that you need to check out.
Yeah, we enjoyed it. It was a fun, different take on it, and we haven't permanently added it into our Christmas rotation, but we watch it. So it is one that is worth mentioning in here because it's got a good animation style. It's got kind of a good story and humor and everything behind it. It's a different tale than you fully expect it to tell. Like there's been a few different ones that Netflix has done. Like one that I want to have an honorable mention on when you bring up Netflix and their anime stuff is the Christmas Chronicles. So you've got Kurt Russell has done 2 of them now where he plays Santa Claus and you get his wife Goldie Hawn as Mrs. Claus, but it is a different take on Santa as well, to where you have true believers that helps keep Santa going and are called upon sometimes, but there is a lot of humor to him. There's a lot of heart, and I was surprised at just how well Kurt just fell into playing Santa Claus. Like he said, like if I only did these for like the rest of my career, my rest of my life, that I'm good with. Like I will continue playing Santa Claus as long as I can because he just loved it and enjoyed it so much. It was a fun and unique. I think the first one, like both of them have their positives and negatives. Like you get a little bit more into the fantastical in the second one. It takes, they go to a beach, but the oldest daughter, she's being a little more cynical because, in the first movie, she loses her dad and she's struggling with her spirit of Christmas. And in the second one, her mom is looking to get remarried. So she's struggling with her dad being forgotten at the holidays. So it does have some deeper meanings depending on who you've lost in your life and everything else too, whether from a kid or adult perspective. But they were actually really surprising Christmas movies that they've done that has come into our rotation. Like our girls have already watched both of them here to kick off their Christmas watching, and I think they've even watched that before we watched Charlie Brown. So they have really dove deep into loving those and wanting to watch them every Christmas.
Yeah, and then there's so many more wonderful movies that you could talk about. There's so many Christmas movies out there. We never got into any of the Hallmark Christmas stuff that they do.
All 457,000
of them. Yes, there's a billion of those. There's plenty of good ones in there as well. There's also some like all-time classics like Miracle on 34th Street, It's a Wonderful Life, some of the all-time, black and white classic films as well.
Even like Bill Murray's Scrooged.
Scrooged is one that's definitely one that's worthy to be on there. Nightmare Before Christmas, which we talked about as one of our Halloween favorites, can also work as a Christmas favorite.
We don't watch it as much as Christmas, but I have watched it at Christmas time.
But it's one that has the duality to do both, right? Like it's a wonderful movie as well that applies both of there. There's, if you want to make the argument about that, there's some people that try to claim that Lethal Weapon is a Christmas movie, or that Gremlins is a Christmas movie.
Or Edward Scissorhands
is a Christmas movie. Like there's all those fun little debates as like, is it or isn't it? And there's like a full list of those that like, are they, aren't they kind of things that you can have, but all fit into that holiday rotation. There are so many good ones that I'm really glad that we sat down and had this conversation to talk about some of our favorite Christmas movies, because there's so many good ones to choose from. Leave a comment on our video what your favorite Christmas movie is. That actually may coincide with the giveaway that Brad's about to go into that we have for the week, but so many different ones. We don't have time to run through them all, but there's so many classic Christmas stories to tell. A Christmas Story is one that we didn't even talk about that's on 24/7.
I'm not a fan of A Christmas Story.
You don't like it, but it's a classic one that a lot of people say it's their favorite. It's one that people have on. A lot of years, my family just had that on in the background while we were doing Christmas together. Like, it's one that a lot of people have on their list as well.
They said you get that 24 to 48 hour marathon that I forget the network that does it.
Like TBS and TNT
that airs it nonstop for that. But I was never a big fan of it. Like I've watched it multiple times. I've watched the later sequel that they just did a few years ago. But I'm not a huge fan of A Christmas Story. So come yell at me in the comments if you want as well, because I'm not a fan of A Christmas Story. It was one that I never watched as a kid. I watched as an adult, so I didn't have that connection to it as a Christmas classic in my childhood. I didn't see it until I was an adult.
Well, I triple dog dare you to watch it again.
Yes, I'm going to take that to move into our giveaways. Josh mentioned we do have our final giveaway of the year taking place within this episode. So we have two $50 gift cards to give away from our friends at Skyline who donated for us to give those away. We also have some stuff from Wicked, Gladiator 2, Red One that we're going to package in for the two winners. So if you want a chance to win these, make sure you're liking the podcast here on YouTube. Go and like the video for episode 48 for this episode and leave a comment with what your favorite holiday special is. So do you disagree with us on some of the ones that we enjoy, especially like with A Christmas Story? Or is there ones that we didn't mention that you enjoy? Leave us a comment telling us about your favorite Christmas film, TV special episode. Like, again, we didn't even talk about episodes with, like, The Office has some very memorable Christmas episodes and stuff like that. Leave us what your favorite things to watch at Christmas is, and you'll be entered to win one of these. We will have two winners, and good luck to everybody. It's going to start with the drop of this episode. It will end on December 14th, and we will announce the two winners on the December 16th episode.
Yeah, so thanks again to Skyline for donating these gift cards to give away. That's two $50 gift cards, one to each winner. Please try to, if you want to enter this, please make sure you have a Skyline in your area, or you could use this as a gift card to somebody that you know that has a Skyline in your area. Perfect stocking stuffer for the holiday season. Once again, we cannot thank Skyline enough. One of our favorite local Cincinnati chili places, and it's, we're so thankful that they gave us these to give away, and enter now for your chance to win.
Yeah, because if you're not a fan of the Cincinnati Three Ways or the Conies or something like that, they also have wraps, which I'm a big fan of their buffalo chicken wrap. So there's a lot of different food that you can find there that can work. But yeah, we want to make sure this goes to somebody who can really use it in, the tri-state area. But Skyline even goes down to as far as Florida with some locations. So they are spread out a bit more. They're from Cincinnati area, from our tri-state area. But if you have a Skyline in your area, make sure you enter. And, we will have 2 winners. So hopefully it goes to someone. And it goes to a great stocking stuffer or present that you can add in for the Christmas time. We're ending it on the 16th, so there's enough time to get it out to you, even if you're not in the area, but you have a Skyline. Maybe you're in Florida and you have a Skyline near you. We can get that out to you before the holidays.
Yeah, get your entries in by the 14th. We will be announcing that episode. We will be announcing the winner on that episode 2 weeks from now, so stay tuned. We will have that out in time for the holiday season. So once again, can't thank you enough for your continued support and enter that giveaway for us.
Yep, so make sure, like the channel on YouTube, like the video for episode 48 and our Christmas favorites, and leave a comment with your favorite Christmas film or TV special or anything else that you love to watch during the holidays, and you'll be entered to win. I'm going to head on over into what's coming up this week. So, it's beginning of December. We're heading into Christmas time, so this is a perfect time to drop a bunch of horror films.
Yep, it's a perfect time of year for that. That seems to track, right? Can't drop Christmas episodes then. It's like dropping horror movies on Valentine's Day. They love to do it around like Christmas and Valentine's Day. This time of year, just so many different horror films that like to drop this time of year. There's some really fun ones coming up in December that we're not even ready to talk about yet, but those are, it's a lot. It's for whatever reason they seem to hit this time of year.
Yeah, we talked about this in our Halloween horror favorites and Halloween time episode that you can go back in the archives and check out, that we seem to have more horror stuff that's released outside of October than in there. So from December, January, February, you have quite a lot of horror stuff that's released. So we have Werewolves is being released along with Getaway and Y2K. So 2 of those are horror comedy. Others is more straightforward. The look of the Werewolves looks pretty good from that. It's got Frank Grillo in it. It looks like it might be a decent kind of action horror film. Then you got a couple comedy horror films coming out. But it is interesting to say that we're kicking off December with 3 horror films.
I love that. Y2K is one that I'm looking forward to checking out and watching. Spoiler alert, it's going to be one that we talk about next week, one that we're excited to get and check out. But yeah, definitely a time of the year for horror movies to come out. Never will understand why they don't put it like within that October window, but they got to have business reasons why that makes sense for them.
Yeah, over on the streaming side, we do have a more traditional holiday film. So we have That Christmas is coming out on December 4th on Netflix. This does feature a new original song by Ed Sheeran. And so it looks pretty interesting. He just released the music video for the song, which I watched, which is very touching for those who have lost. And he's had a few songs where he's lost people. So this song is about those kind of that you've lost or missing around the holiday season. It's a good song. Like he nails a lot of the stuff that he does, but he's a part of this, and it looks like an interesting holiday movie to be able to check out on streaming. But this adds a 4th or 5th Christmas movie or special that Netflix has done now.
Yeah, they're leaning into it heavy now, and I'm excited to check that out. Check that one out for sure.
Over on the TV side, we have 2 pretty big shows coming out. So we had The Acolyte earlier in the year that didn't get great reception. You can go back and see what we thought of it. We were a little more hopeful for it than what it turned out to be for us. But we also have some big hopes for Star Wars Skeleton Crew. That drops on Disney Plus here on December 3rd. It looks like Goonies in Star Wars land. So hopefully that one turns out to be really good. You have Jude Law in it, mostly kid cast outside of Jude Law. We're going to get that dropping here soon. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. I think we actually get the first episode on December 2nd now instead of December 3rd. But we also have Creature Commandos coming on Max on December 3rd. So this is kind of there's been so many mentioned as being the official kickoff to James Gunn's DCU, but this is kind of the kickoff to the DCU. This is an animated series with Creature Commandos. It's a lesser known group in the DC universe, but as James Gunn has mentioned, if someone voices a character in his DCU, they're going to play him in live action. So we're going to see seeing everybody who voices this, who may see them appearing in other live action properties. Especially, I think we have one of our first from Creature Commandos maybe in Superman, that comes out next year. But it's really kicking off James Gunn's DCU.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's a big kicking off point for him. He seems to have a lot of confidence in this story that he's kind of putting it out first and kind of letting see what we get from this James Gunn iteration of the DC universe. And it's 2 big shows kicking off this week to start December. I'm excited to check them both out and really looking forward to diving into those and seeing what we think about it.
It's also potential we're going to see the first Superman trailer this month. It may be in front of Mufasa. Maybe we see it's something released on Max with Creature Commandos to keep it tied in with DC. But, you know, we have this for DC. We'll have the first Superman trailer. They know with just how everything went with Henry Cavill and Man of Steel and, you know, Superman and the Snyderverse, that they really need to come out strong with something new with Superman. So I'm really interested to see how that trailer looks coming out this month. Like, it could drop at any moment. Like, we don't have an official date for that, but, you know, past Creature Commandos, we also have the Superman trailer to look forward to. So the DCU is starting to ramp up.
Yeah, that's a lot to look forward to this week. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. We can't thank you enough for your continued support. Once again, give us a like on YouTube, enter into our giveaway, 5-star reviews on all the audio platforms, do all the things to help us out. Can't thank you for your continued support. Go to willbringthepopcorn.com to get all of our social media info, all of our merch. Go check out our merch store as well. Can't thank you enough for that. Coming up next week, we will be reviewing the film Y2K, the comedy horror film. Excited to talk about that. And we will be giving our review of season 1 of Max's The Penguin, one that I am so looking forward to finally talking about on this show. Definitely one that I'm excited to check out and talk about. So until next time, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next week.